In this Battle Gods Championship contest, Casina defeated one of her strongest enemies, the Ruby Dragon, who was also her best friend. The history teacher said with excitement. The legend of the battle god finally reached its peak. Oh, so, although teacher Casina always behaved casual and unreliable, she is really a super strong fighter at the top of the endless gods' domains. She had defeated many gods so far. After listening to this lesson, Yunshi's heart was filled with all sorts of feelings. The gray-haired history teacher grew up listening to the legends of Casina. The battle god was born in an ancient desert tribe and was recognized by the sands of time when she was still at the hero rank. However, she never used the sword in her life. With the strength of her own body, she defeated countless extraordinary races and stood on the top of the Battle Gods Championship contest, and never lost. Many people think that Casina is probably the strongest one among all the Sky Swords who still appeared in front of the public. The name of the sixth sword is well known in the Endless Gods domains. For the people in the Sky Sword Gods domain, she is a living myth, known as the most likely one to become the fourth deicide Sky Sword. After this history lesson, Yunshi fled from the burning eyes of the girls and crept into the depths of the Sword Palace. With Casina's token, he could go anywhere in the White Lotus Sword Palace, which was probably the greatest convenience of being Casina's disciple. As for his destination, it was the place where the legendary White Lotus secret treasure was located. Accurately speaking, it wasn't the true White Lotus secret treasure but was just a projection of the White Lotus secret treasure. Even so, it was still the most precious treasure in the entire White Lotus Sword Palace. Every year, only the top 10 disciples of the White Lotus Sword Palace were allowed to enter this holy land. Of course, Yunshi didn't have that common sense. He just wandered around the witch's palace and felt something unusual. Finally, he found the room where the White Lotus secret treasure was projected. This place was the biggest secret of the White Lotus Sword Palace. Only the master of the White Lotus Sword domain and the twin witches knew its position. Yunshi found it here by accident. He didn't even know what he found. Look at the steps to enter here. The first step, jump into the waterfall and find the cave hidden in the waterfall. When the twin witches held the sacrificial ceremony, they had brought him here once. The second step, choose the only right path to the underground staircase from the 13 paths. If you chose the wrong one, you would trigger the fatal traps. The third step, after choosing the right path, you must walk in the path following the right rhythm of footsteps. Otherwise, the traps would also be activated. The fourth step, after entering the underground palace smoothly, you must find the only hidden cabin in dozens of palaces. Who would have thought that those precious palaces are all camouflage, and the cabin built in the corner of the garden is the only correct answer? The fifth step, find the mirror in the cabin, then input the correct password and gesture to enter the secret chamber in the mirror. If you said any wrong words, you would never have the chance to retry. The sixth step, you can finally see the door of the secret chamber, but there is no hint about the way to open the door. The seventh step, you can finally touch the projection of the real White Lotus secret treasure, which is also a trap. Because as long as the contact method is incorrect, it would trigger the counterattack of the White Lotus secret treasure. Well, Yunshi didn't know anything. He doesn't walk in the path following the correct rhythm of footsteps, nor did he open the mirror using the right keyword, let alone know the way to open the door. But he had Casina's token. Therefore, none of the traps were activated, because none of the sword palaces in the Sky Sword God's domain would dare regard a Sky Sword as their enemy. In theory, the entire Sky Sword God's domain belonged to Sky Swords. With Casina's token, Yunshi easily found the biggest secret of the White Lotus Sword domain. Why he would run straight to this place after class? Because the girls of the Starwing Knights were becoming more and more strange. After Ling Ling did that thing and tasted the sweetness, other girls also started to imitate her. When he gets up in the morning and opened the window, he saw blue and white panties hanging on the branches outside of the window. When he walked out of the room and raised his head, he saw pink panties hanging in the corridor. Even on the way to walk, he often found black lace panties on the road. In the worst case, Yunshi even found white panties in his lunchbox, which were still warm. Sooner or later, he would be unable to control himself. Now, only while being here, could make him feel at ease. Although he didn't know what the big light ball was in this room, after finding this secret room, Yunshi finally had his own private space. At least, there wouldn't be panties of all colors and unnamed letters which invited him to various secret dating places, ranging from the woods to rivers. If I go, I will no longer be able to be a gentleman. Thinking of this, Yunshi felt that he could still try to struggle. The milky white light ball floated lightly in front of Yunshi, which was the biggest secret of the entire White Lotus Sword Palace, the projection of the real White Lotus secret treasure. However, in Yunshi's eyes, it was just a very distinctive decoration in this secret room. As always, he proficiently reached out his hand, pinched and kneaded the soft, warm light ball, and then saw countless and incredible scenery emerge from the surface of the light ball. It was an old city, bathed in the cold moonlight. Compared with what Yunshi saw last time, the dead city was more bleak and desolate. The snow and ice scattered in the city could be seen everywhere as if time here had been frozen. The cold had gone deep into the ground, making the walls, grass, leaves, and vines all covered with a thick layer of frost. When the cold wind blew, it would always roll up countless silver-white particles. A hunter in black sat in the center of the deserted city, and the magic sword inverted beside him still retained traces of blood. His old face looked at the boundless clear sky, looking at the distant blue horizon and cold moon. Quietly, it seemed that he was the only one left in the world. The sadness, joy and warmth in his life had all disappeared, leaving countless ghosts around him like nightmares. It was the highest inheritance of the ghost sword domain, forbidden siren sword. Boiling volcanoes. Endless volcanic eruptions. As if doomsday had come, the ocean of lava had devoured the earth, mountains, forests, and everything else in the world. Above the lava ocean were dark golden clouds that were constantly churning and dropping fiery red bubbles of lava. Like the real ocean, the lava ocean was also vast and boundless. At the end of sight, white, dazzling lava waves heaved wave peaks of hundreds of feet tall, rolling up one wave of lava after another and hit the red, sulfurized coast of rock. From time to time, there were lava pillars rising to the sky and bombarding the dark golden clouds in the sky, triggering earth-shaking explosions. It was the inheritance of a sky sword, the nuclear sword. In the distance, the sky hid in endless darkness, indicating that a storm was coming. The wind was driving fast-moving clouds, rapidly devouring the twinkling stars. Beneath the storm was an endless, dark and terrible sea. The storm was galloping with thunder and red fire serpent-like lightning flashed across the dark sky one after another, illuminating the waves roiling in the chaotic and turbulent tide. In the storm, the sky and the earth were as dark as hell. The only light was the thunder and lightning rolling in the clouds. In the storm, there were spirits flying, which was the natural phenomenon that represented disaster and death. Numerous runes loomed in the storm, which was the source of the storm, and the evil words of the spirits. It was the inheritance of another sky sword, Storm Sword. Not this one, oh, neither this one. Yunshi pinched the light ball 1, 2, 3 times, but still didn't find his favorite scenario. What he wanted was a scenario that could let him calm down. None of the dead city, lava sea, or storm met his requirements. They all were too fierce. Being pinched and kneaded by Yunshi, the light ball reluctantly changed the scenario inside it again, and finally showed him the scenario he liked. Well, that's it. Yunshi let go of the light ball contentedly, put his hands behind his head and looked comfortably at his favorite scene. It was a pair of Bodhi trees, the only scenario in the light ball that could let him feel relaxed. Looking at the scenario, Yunshi's mind seemed to have integrated into it. Under the old Bodhi twin trees, it was cool and quiet. Even when bees and butterflies flew under the shade, their movements would become gentle. Even the chirps of cicadas became very gentle. The lovely green grass under the Bodhi twin trees was not mixed with a bit of yellow color, and the slender stems stood upright without any shake. As if the Bodhi twin trees were having a sweet dream, there were innumerable bundles of yellow flowers hanging on the branches of the Bodhi twin trees, and the fragrance would percolate into his lungs every time he breathed. Not far away, there was a clear, bottomless river over there. Translucent fish swam in the river happily and sometimes jumped out of the water, leaving a beautiful spray in the air. Looking at this wonderful scene of nature, Yunshi sat quietly in the shade of the tree and naturally felt that his body and mind were relaxed. This scenario was Yunshi's favorite among all the scenarios in the light ball. As long as he looked at it, his heart would naturally calm down and forget all his troubles. Sitting under the Bodhi twin trees, Yunshi felt that everything in the world was far away from him, and his mind was naturally immersed into nature as if he had become a grass, a shrub and a dust particle in the world. There was no need to think about anything deliberately. Just looking at this quiet and harmonious world, Yunshi felt his heart get healed. At this moment, he felt that he could ignore all the troubles such as the threats from his ex-girlfriends, the difficulties he had faced and was facing, and all kinds of temptations from the girls of the Starwing Knights. Ding, ding, ding. From nowhere, Yunshi heard the sound of a bell echoed beside his ears. The sound of the bell wasn't from any instrument, but from the depth of his soul. It was the resonance between his soul and the world. It was the bell that knocked on the door of infinite wisdom, the key to a mysterious field. Every time the bell rang, it represented that Yunshi's soul had been washed by an unknown power once. It was the highest blessing recorded inside of the White Lotus secret treasure, unlimited wisdom resonance. In the history of Buddhism, all the people whose minds had been washed by this sound had eventually become eminent monks and stamped their names on the pages of history. Among them, the most eminent monk had only heard the sound 16 times. However, Yunshi's soul had been washed by this sound hundreds of times, and it seemed that as long as he wanted, he could hear this sound as many times as possible. If the sound had self-consciousness, it would definitely shout, "Young man, you have a great affinity with Buddha. Go to the West and become a Buddhist monk now." But in Yunshi's heart, he only regarded it as euphonious light music. "Oh, the agitation in my heart is cured again today." Ding, ding, ding. Every sound was the inspiration of wisdom. His soul being washed by the sound over and over again, which soothed his fatigue and rippled away impurities in his soul, making his soul more pure and flawless. This process was like polishing a rough gemstone. Some hidden qualities in Yunshi's soul gradually emerged. This also meant that Yunshi's body and mind were ready to find his own strength again. Sitting under the Bodhi trees, Yunshi wasn't thinking about anything, and his mental power began to increase naturally, and the endless sound of the bell had also become more pleasant. Feeling sleepy, Yunshi stretched out and decided to have a good sleep. In another door not far away from Yunshi, a girl stood with her sword in both hands with constantly increasing will and spirit. A virtual shadow of a giant dragon proudly appeared behind the girl, its golden scales were glittering in the air. This was not a common dragon, but a dragon emperor whose name had been crowned with eternal glory in the history of the endless god's domain. Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. One black shadow after another appeared in front of the girl. This was the second holy place of the White Lotus Sword Palace, the proving ground which only opened to the master of the White Lotus Sword domain and the twin witches before. It wasn't a trial like the challenges in the Sky Tower, but a real battle trial in the real world. These summoned dark shadows were all at the hero rank, and none of them knew pain and fear and were randomly enchanted with different mysteries. They were powered by the magic circles of the entire White Lotus Sword Palace. As long as the magic circles still existed, these black shadows could revive over and over again. Now, from 2 black shadows to 4 black shadows to 8 black shadows, there were already 32 black shadows in front of the girl. Very well, this is the trial I want. What the girl was chasing was the power that could crush everything. She didn't mind how strong her enemies were. She had to be faster and stronger than she was now. If not, I will eventually experience the helplessness I felt when I was confronted with Ouroboros. One time of that kind of bad memory is enough. Once Hua made up her mind, nothing could stop her. She used the breathing method which Yunshi also learned. At this time, it finally showed its true features. It wasn't a breathing method that humans could have. Like thunder and lightning across the sky, like a storm sweeping across the sea, like a huge waterfall flying down from a cliff, a loud sound piercing through the earth, soaring straight up into the sky. It was the rage of the dragons. Hua's eyes gradually became the shape of the golden dragons, and the golden dragon's shadow behind her began to coalesce and become clearer. It seemed that something was traversing the distance of time and space, being summoned into her body. Burn everything, tear everything, crush everything. Respond to the old contract, Golden Dragon Emperor, come to me. The broken sword in her hands twisted and transformed into a dragonbone sword. Golden runes appeared on the sword, releasing a unique, overbearing atmosphere. Her strength was expanding and growing. It wasn't a delusion but a reality that was taking place. Wrapped around by golden flames, the roar of dragon became louder. The entire trial area was burning with large flames that burst out in clusters from the depths of the ground, covering the figures of the 32 hero-ranked black shadows. They launched their attacks. Raining Heaven, Water Dragon, Eastern Dragon King, Endless Waves. Raining Heaven can summon cloud, and the rainfall can heal all lives within the range. Water Dragon is to use the magic power to form a dragon-shaped battle pet. Eastern Dragon King can borrow the Eastern Dragon King's power to strengthen the performer. Endless Waves can summon endless water to submerge mountains and rivers. Even though the Black Shadows had used these mysteries, they couldn't break through the scorching purgatory that was forming. Hua just stood there and did nothing. The high temperature released from her body had dispelled all the magic spells. In the final analysis, the essence of the two sides was quite different. Naturally, these attacks from the Black Shadows couldn't hurt her. Boom, boom, boom. As if the power around Hua could grow limitlessly, as if this process had awakened an ancient existence, countless materials were being absorbed by this unformed dragonbone sword, and then compressed, refined, and evolved towards an embryonic form. Yes, this was the process of casting a god weapon. Hua was forging her sword by using the power of her bloodline. If she had this sword when she was facing Ouroboros. No, not enough, not enough. The earth was trembling and the whole space was shaking. With the roar of the dragon, countless lights began to wake up from the collapsing ground and then rose to the sky, flying over to Hua's palm. It was a weapon once lost in history, a fragment of a dragonbone demon sword. The Dragon Emperor, who was once regarded as an evil lord and slaughtered, responded to Hua's call, reviving in the distant Sky Sword god's domain. The name of the sword, Dragon Emperor's Sword. It was forged by using the bones of the legendary Dragon Emperor, an ancient strong existence who had a relationship with the sky-flying bloodline. This dragon had golden scales and the most pure blood of the Dragon King, but ultimately fell into darkness and abandoned all glory, wandering in the nightmare world with resentment. Fight for me, Dragon Emperor. This was Hua's order, an amnesty from the purest sky-flying bloodline. Even though he had become a member of the Abyss and wandered in the nightmare world forever, Dragon Emperor still kept the agreement it made in the past and returned to the human world in the form of a god weapon, Dragon Emperor's Sword. 50%, 60%, 87%, 99%. Spanning the distance between time and space, the once lost dragon sword had returned. In the burning golden flames, black gases were constantly released and surrounded the 32 hero-ranked black shadows. The reason that the process stopped at 99% was because a crucial ceremony was still unfinished. Numerous golden flames turned into golden powders, flying around Hua's body. Hua slowly but firmly raised the dragonbone demon sword in her hands. Behind her, in the endless flames, the shadow of the Dragon Emperor was becoming clearer and clearer. Although there was only one head, but the sharp golden teeth, the erect pupils, and the huge scales all exuded a kind of tyranny over everything. Now, all the necessary elements for a new god weapon's birth had been gathered. Legend, mystery, and the power of the source of the world. Hua was forging a weapon that only gods could make in the past. This sword would be her weapon before she reached the legend rank, which had a very strong lethal effect on fantastic creatures. Dragon Emperor's Sword. Wake up. Without any hesitation, Hua raised the sword high in her hand. The ground under her feet began to tremble, one tiny crack after another continued to extend around as if a mountain suddenly pressed down on this land. Instantly, Hua's eyes changed, reflecting the scenery in the golden Dragon Emperor's pupils. Layers of golden light waves rippled from the god weapon in Hua's hands. A powerful force of mana exploded madly around Hua, and countless broken stones were shattered and then turned into ashes. Under this terrifying power, everything was collapsing. Dragon, With the help of Huahua's belief and bloodline force, the god weapon was returning from the nightmare world, forged and evolved towards the last step. Behind Huahua, the huge golden dragon raised its head and looked at the world, as proud as when it was still alive. Emperor. Huge golden light waves were first compressed to the limit, then released, cut, smashed and crushed the 32 hero-ranked black shadows. The black shadows were like a sand castle being trampled by an excited child on the beach, breaking up in an instant. Countless golden waves of light spread wildly. The earth was burning and melting, all things in front of the stacked golden light waves equally turned into powders, and then being blown away. Sword. In the face of the Dragon Emperor's sword, even the stars would be shattered. Huahua raised the god weapon in her hands and absorbed the Dragon Emperor's shadow behind her into the sword bit by bit. Dragon soul casting. This was the last step to give spirituality to the god weapon, but also the most difficult step. 99% the previous process was for paving a way for this last step. The last 1% was the most important thing. An army formed by 64 hero-ranked black shadows appeared. The army formed of 64 hero-ranked black shadows was defeated. After touching the light waves, the new black shadows were crushed like pieces of paper in a storm, leaving no trace. The giant dragon's shadow roared and was satisfied with the girl who summoned it. Unmatched potential and incomparable internal drive for excellence. Her eyes were like storms, like lightning, like lava. She was destined to trample on all the common sense of the world. All hero-ranked beings would pursue the most suitable god weapon for themselves. God weapons would also choose the most suitable master. Dragon Emperor. No, it's Dragon Emperor's sword now. Dragon Emperor's sword had chosen its new master. Go! The last will of the Dragon Emperor left the nightmare world, flying to the sword. The sword was forged. Dragon Emperor's sword. This was a legendary magic weapon made of the bones of the Dragon Emperor. The hilt of the sword was black with golden flames wrapped around it, and the body of the sword was made of huge dragon teeth. The sword doesn't have a blade, because this isn't a weapon that needs to tear the enemy's body with its blade. The power of the sword itself can crush everything. A line of golden patterns stretched from the end of the handle to the tip of the sword, which was about 1.8 meters long and 0.4 meters wide. In general, the sword doesn't look like a weapon for humans at all, but rather like a giant weapon tailored for a 3-meter-tall giant. On the sword body, there was a dragon rune, which represented the real name of this dragon bone magic sword, Dragon Emperor's sword. Once upon a time, the man who forged the sword tried to give it as an inheritance from generation to generation to the successors of his eternal empire. However, this unscrupulous man who murdered the Dragon Emperor didn't satisfy his desires. The kingdom he created was completely destroyed after he died of the curse of the sword, and he didn't have any successors. The curse of the Dragon Emperor not only killed this man, but also killed all the people who participated in the battle against the Dragon Emperor and even affected those people's families and countries. They didn't expect that the Dragon Emperor would fall into the nightmare world and be transformed into one of the strongest monsters of the nightmare world. Because of this, the Dragon Emperor's curse was greatly strengthened and caused their death. In fact, the prototype of this sword had long disappeared into history, leaving only the last fragment in the mortal world. Since the battle against the Dragon Emperor, countless years had passed. The original dragon bone sword had been destroyed by the Nightmare Monarch, because it thought that the sword didn't deserve to be called Dragon Emperor's sword. Don't get it wrong. The Dragon Emperor was not afraid of death when it was alive. If these people had defeated and killed it using their own power, it wouldn't mind whether or not they would use its body to forge god weapons. If they had defeated it face to face, it wouldn't mind calling this sword forged by using its bones Dragon Emperor's sword. However, the man whose name and kingdom had long been forgotten in the river of history was too sinister. He killed the Dragon Emperor's only descendant by despicable means, and used the Dragon Emperor's descendants' flesh and blood to cast a vicious curse, which corroded the Dragon Emperor's invincible dragon scales. Only then did he gather a group of people to encircle and kill the Dragon Emperor. In this process, they poisoned, cursed, trapped and slaughtered the Dragon Emperor. They did everything they could and finally, they gave the Dragon Emperor a fatal blow, which was by using the remains of the Dragon Emperor's only descendant. Therefore, the Dragon Emperor would never admit that such villains are qualified to use its body to forge god weapons. None of them had that qualification. With resentment, the Dragon Emperors activated an ancient contract and reincarnated its dragon's soul into the most horrible nightmare world, and instantly became a lord of the nightmare world, becoming a nightmare monarch. In the next decades, it killed all the human beings who had participated in the battle against it and destroyed all the god weapons that were made of its body parts. As time went by, no one still remembered the Dragon Emperor and the people who killed it. Only the sky-flying bloodline still remembered it and summoned it by using the last fragment made of its bones. The Nightmare Monarch had long ceased being the Dragon Emperor. However, it still responded to the girl's call and recognized the girl. The sky-flying bloodline is qualified to be the master of the real Dragon Emperor's sword, and because of this reason, it returned to the mortal world again. Across time and space, across the barriers between the nightmare world and the real world, the Nightmare Monarch floated in the endless darkness, slowly opening its muddy eyes. The last golden glow began to fade away from its pupils. It was its last glorious memory, it was the last unsullied soul of the Dragon Emperor. After its reincarnation in the nightmare world, its body had become thousands of times bigger with countless weird eyes scattered over its new body. With only a stare from any of its eyes, millions of wise creatures would go mad. The last fragment of the dragon bone sword represented the last pride of the Dragon Emperor in the mortal world. Go! The huge black existence gently reached out one of its tentacles and ejected the other fragments of the Dragon Emperor's sword to the girl from the nightmare world. Together with its last unsullied dragon soul, it placed all its trust on the girl who summoned it in accordance with the ancient contract. Oh, the sky-flying bloodline, what an ancient memory. It could barely remember when it was still the Dragon Emperor, it was dumbfounded when it witnessed the true power of the sky-flying bloodline. As time went by, even itself didn't believe that the sky-flying bloodline still remembered its name and summoned it. So, let this be the end of the Dragon Emperor. It would present its last unsullied dragon soul and bones to the noble and sacred supreme blood, the wing beyond all things. You are qualified to use this sword. You are qualified to call it Dragon Emperor's sword. Ha! Finally, Huahua stopped after the sword absorbed the last dragon soul into it. With her location as the center, the entire area was being torn by storms, volcanoes, and lightning at the same time. The ground collapsed and formed a huge whirlpool terrain. The sword is forged. A large number of sweat beads dropped from Huahua's forehead, and then were quickly evaporated by the flames on the Dragon Emperor's sword. Being surrounded by scorching flames, the girl's eyes became firmer and more confident. She hadn't reached the hero rank, but could forge her own god weapon. Huahua trampled again on the common sense of the entire Sky Sword God's domain and even the entire Endless God's domains. As long as she wanted to, she could do anything. What she wanted would become unshakable truth. This was the power of the sky-flying bloodline. Ding, ding, ding. In the room of the White Lotus secret treasure, Yunshi suddenly had a premonition and woke up from the sound of the bell. It was a kind of premonition you had for no reason. Like an intuition from heaven, he felt as if something bad for him had been born somewhere. It's dangerous, very dangerous. What is it? Yunshi racked his brains and could not figure out why he had such an intuition. He had a feeling that the danger was very close. Will there be anything in the White Lotus Sword Palace so dangerous? Not far away from where Yunshi was, in the place for trials. Good. Perfect weight, perfect length, perfect width, perfect sword. Huahua was testing the sword. The Dragon Emperor's sword was more powerful than Huahua had expected. The material of the sword was almost indestructible. Plus the dragon soul lodged in the sword, the power it could release could even destroy a world if necessary. Now, if she faced Ouroboros again, even if she didn't use her sky-flying bloodline, she had the confidence to punch its teeth through the back of its skull. Any females who dare to touch my little she is my enemy, Huahua announced while dangerous lights flashed through her eyes. Above her forehead, a strand of hair rotated and warned its master. Wait, more enemies. Huahua looked at the dense red dots in her jealousy radar. She always wondered if her jealousy radar had been broken after she came to the White Lotus Sword Palace. Why do the red dots representing the enemy increase every day? She almost had an intensive phobia because of this. Ignore all miscellaneous little fish. With a sweep of her fingertips, Huahua wiped out most of the tiny red dots on the panel of her jealousy radar. Are these people particularly interested in little she? According to Huahua's past experience, most of the remaining red dots should be Yunshi's other childhood sweethearts. They were her most dangerous enemies and she would never relax her vigilance of them. Fortunately, I forced little she to be my maid. Huahua patted herself on the chest. She couldn't imagine what would happen if she didn't force Yunshi to inherit the great swordsmaid's inheritance. Humph, even in this situation, there are still so many girls who want to become intimate with my little she. If they know he is a man, I can't imagine how many girls would pursue him. Yawn. Yunshi suddenly had a chill in the room. He was more and more sure that danger was approaching. Anyway, I will never give my little she to anyone. None of Yi Li, El Phyllis, and Millie can succeed. Neither the girls of the Starwing Knights, Mew Mew, or the Twin Witches. After targeting all the red dots on the panel of her jealousy radar, Huahua's eyes became firmer. The childhood sweetheart must be the final winner. No matter how many enemies she would encounter, or how strong her enemies would be, she would win the war. My ancestor, bless me. Stabbing the Dragon Emperor's sword into the ground, Huahua prayed to the source of her bloodline. In the vague aura surrounding her, there were feathers appearing behind her. Well, break time is over. Yunshi reluctantly let go of the big light ball. If it hadn't been confirmed that he couldn't take the light ball out of the room, he would have already brought it back to his room and use it to be his pillow. What a perfect music pillow. It was the first time that Yunshi wanted something so much. The big light ball suspended in the room and looked at Yunshi. Others who entered the room were all respectful, and some of them were even kneeling on the ground to accept the light ball's blessing. But this guy only regarded it as a music pillow. And that virtual world in the light ball was one of the top-level inheritances, the supreme treasure of Buddhism. Who knows how he could find it and let it become a music player. It's not good to go on like this. After leaving the room, Yunshi once again had a profound rethinking of his current situation. As long as he was still pretending to be a maid, it would be impossible for him to leave the girls' dorm. Sooner or later, there would be accident. In fact, there were already accidents that had happened. Yunshi remembered what happened when he was practicing closed-mouth Zen. Was that the instinctive reaction of his body after losing the control of his mind? No matter how he pretended to be harmless, his man's nature wouldn't change. As long as he didn't pay attention, he would turn into a big grey wolf ravaging the sheep around him. Huahua, no, I can't control myself. Yunshi worried, just like any ordinary 16-year-old boy. Once he had tasted the forbidden fruit once, he would never be able to maintain innocence. Where is she now? Is she all right? Naturally, Yunshi recalled that big sister, his sword skill teacher who seduced him to eat the forbidden fruit. The first time was always unforgettable, not to mention that this first time was so thrilling. Every time he recalled it, his ears would burn. Under the waterfall of the White Lotus Sword Palace, Yunshi looked surprisingly at the familiar figure standing in the pool that was almost boiling. A large number of bubbles were constantly rising from the clear and transparent pool, but none of the fish died. They were just knocked over and over by the sudden rising bubbles. Ha. Originally, it was just a simple breathing sound, but Yunshi felt as if he was listening to the sound of a raging storm and the dull sound of a volcano about to erupt. She closed her eyes and stood in front of a sword that Yunshi had never seen before. The handle of the sword was dark and the blade was pure white mixed with pale gold lines. Just being stabbed in the ground there, it naturally released a huge pressure on the soul. Even if ordinary people saw this sword, they would immediately feel the terrible power contained in it. Yunshi realized at a glance that this was a top-ranked god weapon that normally only appeared in legends and tales. Although he knew that his childhood sweetheart was a girl who could create miracles, he still didn't believe his eyes. He hadn't seen her for a few days, and now she had obtained a god weapon? What kind of joke is this? How could such a god weapon appear in the White Lotus sword domain? The style of this sword was not at all like that of the Eastern God's domain, but rather like the superweapons used by giants. A sword about 1.8 meters long. Would any ordinary person in the Eastern God's domain choose to use such a long weapon? A sword that was even taller than her. Does Hua like such a weapon? Nevertheless, he felt like the sword was unexpectedly matched with Hua. Yunshi also had similar god weapons: Water God's crown, Sailing Jellyfish robe, and White Emperor's mask. However, he could only release their true power in the Water God's world. Because his own strength wasn't strong enough to control the true power of the three god weapons, after leaving the Water God's world, the power of the three god weapons would greatly diminish. In the outside world, he could only summon 10,000 mist souls from his mist soul army and could only summon one Water God's priestess at a time. His compatibility with these god weapons was 100%, just because his own strength wasn't strong enough, so he couldn't release their true power. However, Hua was different. She had enough strength to release 100% of the power of any god weapon. Perhaps this was the biggest reason why this great sword would willingly recognize Hua as its master. The more powerful the god weapons were, the more critical they were of those who would inherit them. This was common sense in the endless gods' domains. If there was no suitable successor, some ancient god weapons would even wait for thousands of years and would never randomly choose a common hero-ranked person as its master. Now, Hua hadn't even reached the hero rank, but already had her own god weapon. How strong is she? But for some reason, Yunshi always felt a little chilly around his neck when he looked at this god weapon. It seemed that this god weapon had some kind of mild hostility towards him. Above Hua's forehead, a green light flashed and locked on Yunshi, as if it was telling its master, "That man who betrayed you appeared." "Oh, Yunshi." Taking a deep breath, Hua smiled at Yunshi. "Little she, what a coincidence. Hua, is this your new weapon?" Yunshi jumped to Hua and touched the huge sword, which seemed to not be sharp at all. Ah. What surprised Yunshi is what happened. The sword didn't look sharp at all, but just by touching the sword body, his finger had been scratched by some invisible force. "Be careful, little she. This sword has a bad temper." Hua quickly pulled Yunshi's hand back. The Dragon Emperor's sword has a terrible attack effect. It had extraordinary lethality to all kinds of fantastic creatures, gods, demons, and even nightmare creatures. This sword made of the Dragon Emperor's bones was specially forged for slaying legend-ranked beings. After the battle with Ouroboros, Hua realized that her attack power was still not sufficient, so the first thing she did after returning to the White Lotus Sword Palace was to forge the Dragon Emperor's sword by activating an ancient contract inherited by her sky-flying bloodline. What a marvelous god weapon! Yunshi licked the wound on his fingertip and had a preliminary understanding of the characteristics of this god weapon. Just now, his fingertip didn't really touch the body of the sword. There was a terrible invisible force that was wrapping around the sword. The moment his fingertip touched it, his fingertip had been torn apart by the invisible force. Although he wasn't a hero-ranked warrior but a real hero-ranked baker, his physical strength had long exceeded the limits of mortals. However, he was still injured. If Hua used it to release her sky-flying sword, she could probably kill a real legend-ranked dragon in the twinkling of an eye. This sword is prepared to defeat a strong enemy, Hua said as the sword turned into a shadow and entered her body. It was proof that she had absolute control over the Dragon Emperor's sword. "Are you all right?" Gently pulling Yunshi's hand, Hua stretched out her tongue and lightly licked Yunshi's wound. "That's all right. It was just a little scratch." Yunshi looked at his childhood sweetheart with tender eyes. "Gentle and strong. Be aggressive and enthusiastic. Like the Queen of Summer, like the Golden Sun." This is his childhood sweetheart, his first love. Now, his first love was still ongoing. The Great Xia Empire, in the Great Xia Palace. "What? Someone bullied my sister?" Xia Jie, one of the most outstanding geniuses of the Great Xia Empire, the first heir of the Great Xia Empire, roared and pounded on the red iron table in his room. "Who dared bully my sister?" After receiving the report from his subordinates in the White Lotus Sword Domain, he was surprised to know that there was actually someone in that remote sword domain who dared to bully Xia Ling, his favorite little sister. Speaking of the White Lotus Sword domain, he had also been there as a transfer student. This was an open secret of the Great Xia Empire. The White Lotus Sword domain itself was not worth mentioning, but there was the White Lotus secret treasure left by Yun Hai the Sword Master there. No one knew what the real White Lotus secret treasure looked like. No one had ever seen the true White Lotus secret treasure, but the projection of the White Lotus secret treasure was real. As long as you had seen the light ball, you would instinctively be awed by this mysterious treasure. Xia Jie himself also got his benefits from the projection of the true White Lotus secret treasure, which eventually let him be recognized as the first heir of the Great Xia Empire. Just like him, his sister also went to the White Lotus Sword Palace. Like him a few years ago, Xia Ling was also recognized as a genius in the Great Xia Empire. From childhood to childhood, Xia Jie loved this sister dearly, because she was the most similar to himself. Both of them were talented and willing to make the effort to improve themselves. They were far superior to other royal families of his own generation. How could anyone beat his sister in such a remote sword domain? No, I have to go and see it with my own eyes. Whoever bullied my sister has to pay a price. The irrepressible Xia Jie immediately began to order his own people, ready to go to the White Lotus Sword domain. Not only Xia Jie, but also all the ancient families began to send people to this remote sword domain through the Star Bridge, because all of them knew how special the White Lotus secret treasure was. Many people flocked to the White Lotus Sword domain, and the local people of the White Lotus Sword domain enjoyed the most shining moments in their lives. On that day, all the people who had experienced the blessing of the White Lotus secret treasure were contested by the forces from all over the Sky Sword God's domain. Oh, you are a cook. Go with us. Since you have been blessed by the White Lotus secret treasure, you must be a great cook who can make sparkling fried rice with eggs. Oh, you're a town guard who took an arrow in the knee? That's all right. Come and marry the most beautiful girl from our family. What? Your child has also been blessed by the White Lotus secret treasure? Oh, come here, good boy, do you want to eat sugar? If you go with us, you can eat sugar every day. For a time, all people who had been blessed by the White Lotus secret treasure became shopping rush goods. Especially those children, they had great potential. The major family forces had long parceled them out in the first several days. Not only humans, but even cats, dogs, and other animals had been robbed. The detectives of the major forces even fought for these animals. When the people of other gods' domains came, they surprisingly found that they could not even find a stray dog. In just a few days, 99% of the ordinary people living in the Sword Tip area had been recruited by various forces. Many people moved away happily, and all their remaining properties were sold at stunningly high prices. In just one night, the price of houses in the White Lotus Sword domain began to rise. Even the prices of the farthest houses had risen dozens of times. Now, even the toilets near White Lotus Sword Palace could be sold at a staggeringly high price, and most of the owners of the toilets weren't even willing to sell the toilets in this situation. If it wasn't because the White Lotus Sword Palace was the highest school in the White Lotus Sword domain, these crazy people would even buy every brick and tile of the White Lotus Sword Palace. The forces who came too late couldn't even buy a stray dog. In this situation, they moved their eyes to the disciples of the White Lotus Sword Palace. If it was unusual, even if they knew that the Sword Palace was also a strong force, the major forces of the Sky Sword God's domain wouldn't mind dividing it up by force. However, they couldn't do this. To be precise, they didn't dare do this. Because that was still suspended above the White Lotus Sword Palace. Cassina the battle god's floating ship, the sands of time. Cassina the battle god, her name was the strongest deterrence to all forces. Even the strongest family didn't dare to show any irreverence in front of Cassina. To provoke a sky sword was equal to seeking one's own death in the Sky Sword God's domain. Therefore, no matter what they thought, no matter how eager they were for the disciples of the White Lotus Sword Palace, all forces could only follow the common rules, using various temptations except for violence to allure the disciples of the White Lotus Sword Palace. Nevertheless, there were still innumerable subtle influences they could use. All disciples of the White Lotus Sword Palace were their targets. They were even willing to throw money at the mortals living outside of the Sword Palace, let alone the disciples of the Sword Palace. For a time, all disciples of the White Lotus Sword Palace received solicitations from countless forces. For a time, all disciples of the White Lotus Sword Palace, especially the disciples who had exposed how many sounds they had heard when the White Lotus secret treasure appeared, fell into the happiest trouble they could have. Should they go to a middle-level sword domain to marry a strong sect master's daughter, or to be an administrator of a high-level sword domain? No matter what they chose, it was like reaching the sky in a single bound to those ordinary disciples of the White Lotus Sword Palace. For Yunxi, his greatest worry was that as long as he got out of the Sword Palace, there would be people who got close and whispered to him, "Hello, do you want to sell your dogs? I can give you a very high price. Not for sale. Not for sale. I won't sell any of my dogs." Looking at these people who coveted Star Thunder, Starfire, and Star Snow, Yunxi had an angry facial expression. Tea in the White Lotus Sword Palace, after class. The first family of the Ghost Sword domain is recruiting. As long as you join, you will be our formal disciple, enjoying free estate, maids, servants, and everything you want. In the corridor of the Sword Palace, several foreign students from the Ghost Sword domain were handing out leaflets enthusiastically with a smile on their faces. The third princess of the Great Xia Empire is recruiting. If you want to be an officer in the Great Xia Empire, this is your best opportunity. The officer of the Great Xia Empire wore a pale golden robe and shouted with great enthusiasm. He just accompanied the third princess of the Great Xia Empire to study here. Unexpectedly, he had such a great opportunity. The army of the Great Hand Sword domain is recruiting. The more sounds you heard, the higher the treatment we can provide. You heard one sound, you can be a centurion. If you heard two sounds, you can be a chiliarch. If you heard three sounds, you can be a general. If you heard more than four sounds, you can speak to us face to face. The foreign students from the Great Hand Sword domain were also shouting loud, recruiting for the army of their sword domain. Come here, come here. The Star Silk Alliance recruits people. We can provide all kinds of sword skills, god weapons, and various treasures to you. Our slogan is, as long as we have money, nothing will be a problem. Even the Business Alliance had begun to join in. This was the way that the major forces crowded into the White Lotus Sword Palace had come up with. Because of the existence of Casina the battle god, they couldn't use any dirty means, therefore, they started to lure the disciples of the Sword Palace using all kinds of temptations. If both sides thought that it was a fair deal, even Casina the battle god couldn't do anything to stop them. Therefore, the foreign students of the White Lotus Sword Palace soon received tasks from their respective sword domains and began to wantonly recruit other students in the Sword Palace. Especially those disciples who accidentally revealed how many sounds they heard when the White Lotus secret treasure appeared, everyone became the hottest target, and for those who didn't disclose how many sounds they had heard, there were also methods for giving a vague guess. All the disciples of the White Lotus Sword Palace were listed by the major forces. At the top of the form was naturally Hua Hua, who crushed all her rivals before entering the Sword Palace, and the second was Xia Ling, the princess of the Great Xia Empire. Behind them were other hero-ranked disciples. Incidentally, Xiao Cao had also entered the top 10 list because of her performance at the Battle Gods Championship contest. All the members of the Starwing Knights were ranked very high. Hua Yu's rank was 12th in the list, which was even higher than a lot of hero-ranked old disciples. The entire Starwing Knights had long become a coveted target for all the forces from top-ranked sword domains. If it wasn't because of Casina's deterrence, these girls would have been divvied up by all the major forces. Even the maid in the Starwing Knights, because of his 3 little puppies, was watched by many people. Every day when Yunxi went out, there would be people asking how much they could buy the 3 little puppies for. They didn't care about the money. As long as the problem could be solved with money, it wouldn't be a problem. Unfortunately, they were denied entrance at the door. How could Yunxi sell the Star Spirit team that Maya built for himself? Not only Yunxi, none of the members of the Starwing Knights even considered the seemingly attractive conditions set forth by these forces. From Hua Yu, Xiao Cao to any of the ordinary members of the Starwing Knights, all of them refused the invitations from these forces. Are you kidding me? The Starwing Knights are Mai's knights, we won't leave without Mai's permission. Not knowing why they refused, All the representatives of the major forces were bewildered. Are you really girls from common families? Facing the solicitation of forces from top-ranked sword domains, shouldn't you catch this great opportunity to join us? What are you waiting for? We can give you a greater future and let you become the highest type of human being. There is a common rule to absorb outstanding geniuses from common families into the upper classes. Why did these village girls refuse our kindness? Are you so willing to stay in the Starwing Knights, which sounds like a knights group in a young girl's romantic dream? Are your heads broken? Or has the entire Starwing Knights already been taken by some concealed family or sect? After some investigation, they had to admit that the entire Starwing Knights may have joined a famous family, their leader, Hua Yu's family. After all, even in the entire Western God's domain, Hua Yu's family was one of the oldest and the most legendary one. They had to sigh for Hua Yu's good luck. Who would expect that an unknown knight group, which was formed because of their leader's romantic idea, would be so united and so lucky? Even after all the members being blessed by the White Lotus secret treasure, none of the members were willing to leave. Even so, they didn't give up trying, so the girls of the Starwing Knights were still being harassed every day by the predecessors of the White Lotus Sword Palace, which accidentally gave Yunshi some breathing room. However, in this storm, he himself also had difficulties keeping out of the affair. My family likes dogs best. Would you like to come to my house with the 3 cute puppies? After being refused many times, the female disciples of White Lotus Sword Palace also learned the way to deal with Yunshi. They never mentioned their purpose of buying Star Thunder, Starfire, and Star Snow, but focused their attention on Yunshi. I know you like dogs, and everyone likes dogs, but why are you so close? Yunshi suddenly found that he was separated from one whirlpool and involved in another. Is this a delusion? It must be a delusion. Why are the ladies of the White Lotus Sword Palace beginning to learn from the girls of the Starwing Knights? Remember, you are ladies, you should be highly cultured and steeped in propriety. So don't get so close, please. As the old saying goes, there is no impervious wall in the world. If there is a secret, then it will be leaked sooner or later. Ladies from famous families in the Sky Sword God's domain were eager to join the Starwing Knights. After using all kinds of methods, they finally knew the most important condition for joining the Starwing Knights. It was an unexpected condition, but thinking again, the condition was indeed reasonable. Will you give me a single hair from your head? I've heard that this is a prerequisite for joining the Starwing Knights. No wonder my Lan always rejected my application before. Rest assured, everyone here will keep it a secret. Give me your hair, Looking at the girls' excited eyes and their approaching full bosoms, Yunshi felt dizzy and almost agreed. Hey, should a gentleman refuse a lady's request? Anyway, there are still a lot of seeds, and the ladies in front of me are also cultured girls from famous families. Should I give them all the remaining seeds? But if it goes on like this, will I drop hair too fast and become bald one day? Don't be fooled. Looking at Yunshi, who almost surrendered to the girls around him, Hua Yu finally couldn't bear it and was trying to persuade him. With her superior strength and breasts, she pushed aside the girls around Yunshi, pressed her hands on Yunshi's shoulders, and said in all earnestness, the Starwing Knights can't be so easy to enter. Now the Starwing Knights had long not been the first small group of girls who were blessed by Mai. Even though she didn't expect that this small group would develop to today's level, it made the major forces in all the Sky Sword God's domain feel envious. Having truly felt the power of Mai's blessing, Yunshi's seed, she had regarded all the members of the Starwing Knights as her companions. They were not superiors and subordinates, but the real knights who gathered around Mai and fought for Mai. Feeling the power of blessings every day, every hour, every second, the relationship amongst everyone and Mai were becoming deeper and deeper. Mai's blessing isn't so cheap. Hua Yu glanced at the girls who thought that Mai's blessing was easy to obtain and didn't know how precious it really was. Their outlooks were too narrow. If people knew the true power of Mai's blessing, it would cause a mess that wouldn't be inferior to the great disturbance for the appearance of the White Lotus secret treasure. Hua Yu was born in the most famous family of the Night God's domain. She was certain that the rank of Mai's blessing was even higher than the blessing of the White Lotus secret treasure. It shared Mai's unlimited possibilities with all the members of the Starwing Knights. Otherwise, it was impossible to explain how these ordinary girls suddenly became geniuses in such a short time. As the leader of the Starwing Knights, except for Mai, she knew how many sounds every girl of the Starwing Knights had heard, which undoubtedly couldn't be announced to anyone. What's more, Mai's blessing wasn't a once-only use. As long as they were still around Mai, their talents would still slowly increase. This could be proved by her own growth. Hua Yu's white golden rose bloodline was one of the strongest bloodlines of the night god's domain. All people who awakened this bloodline had become world-famous heroes in history. As the only one in the Starwing Knights who could compete with Xiao Cao, the power of her white golden rose bloodline had begun to show, which could be clearly seen from her hair color. Her originally golden curly hair was gradually turning to a platinum color, which was the proof of her legendary bloodline, the evidence of her talent that was constantly sublimating. Mai's blessing could even strengthen her white golden rose bloodline, and Mai just gave this blessing to all the members of the Starwing Knights equally. After realizing this, Hua Yu was really shocked. Only she really realized how terrible the power of this blessing was. It was a miracle that was even strong enough to break the common sense of the world. How can you understand what kind of blessing this is? In this half-tone of curiosity, I do not admit that you are eligible to join the Starwing Knights. If Mai really recognized you like she recognized Miu Miu before, I wouldn't object. However, it's obvious that your motivation is not pure. Your enthusiasm is fake. Who are you? Your family and my family have a good relationship. Why do you refuse us? Please, give us a chance, said the noble girl from Li family. Her family was one of the branches of the Li family in the Great Tang Sword domain and had a good relationship with the Hua family. Hua family wasn't the first family in the White Lotus Sword domain. Yun family had a longer history than Hua family, and Xia family had the most powerful army in the White Lotus Sword domain. The Hua family in the White Lotus Sword domain was a branch of the main Hua family in the Western Gods domain. In some sense, they were still outsiders in the eyes of these local families. Because she monopolized the Starwing Knights, the girls from other families had long treated her as a thorn in the flesh. You guys, do you really think so? Hua Yu shook her head and then pulled Yunshi's hand. If you really want to join the Starwing Knights, then first, make an oath. You, from toes to hair, from body to soul, must all be Mai's. No matter what you encounter, no matter what you face, you must remain faithful and fight for Mai. Hey, this is different from what we heard. Isn't Mai's hair the token to join the Starwing Knights? Sworn loyalty to Mai? A maid? Are you kidding me? Hua Yu's words shocked the girls from the big families in the White Lotus Sword domain. Nobody expected that Mai's position in the Starwing Knights was so special. Isn't Mai just a maid? Only a small number of girls' eyes brightened up, looking at Mai with hot desire. Hua Yu quietly remembered the names of these girls and found that they were all from famous families. It seemed that they were aware of something and ready for it. If they could really get Mai's approval, Hua Yu didn't mind accepting several new members for the Starwing Knights. Apparently, even though Mai didn't send them her hair, there were still girls who were attracted to Mai. Should I say that this is how great Mai's charm is? In this way, the number of noble girls and civilian girls in the Starwing Knights can also be balanced slightly. Thank you, Hua Yu. I really didn't know what to do right then. Yunshi breathed a sigh of relief and thanked Hua Yu, who saved him from the siege. Mai, you have to be more confident and refuse when it's time to refuse. Those who don't know how to refuse others will not become great people. Hua Yu took Yunshi's hand, and they sat together on the bench under the shade of the tree, like a beautiful landscape painting, which caused many disciples who passed by to look sideways frequently. You are the one who has changed our destiny. Without you, there would be no Starwing Knights. The Starwing Knights were born because of you. Please take responsibility. Hey, why does it feel like I'm being preached to by my wife? Yunshi wondered at the blonde girl sticking to his side. Initially, when he met with her, as well as Xiao Cao, Mai Lan, Ling Ling, and other girls in the Starwing Knights, it was only by chance that he went to take the Sword Palace entrance exam. Because he wanted to bless these girls who struggled for their own destiny and to test his newly obtained ability, he gave them his seed. At that time, he really didn't expect that there would be a small miracle called the Starwing Knights. In this small girl knights group, which had only a few dozens of members, there were girls from famous families such as Hua Yu, and civilian geniuses such as Xiao Cao. There were careless girls like Ling Ling, and also careful girls such as Mai Lan. As time went by, these girls from different places, who had never known each other before, became a closely connected group, just like a big family. Yunshi looked at the threads between himself and Hua Yu, and all the members of the Starwing Knights. Today, these seeds, as always, continued to convey to him the experience of the girls, sharing their secrets. In contrast, his own seed also fed back his growth to them to enhance their talents and potential. The connection between his seeds and their seeds were like a net connecting all the people in the Starwing Knights, and he was in the center of the net. He was the only one at the core that could receive the strong support of all the Starwing Knights at the same time. As long as he was in this network, everyone would benefit a lot. This was the greatest gift from the stars to him, the foundation of his growing strength. It was only now that he realized that the net was not only a net to enhance his strength, but also enhanced something else. Hua Yu, Xiao Cao, Ling Ling, Mai Lan, Lu Lu, the experience he received from them was obviously more than that of the other girls in the Starwing Knights. Under the principle of equivalent exchange, the experience they received from Yunshi's seed was also more than that of other girls. If thread could be regarded as a relationship, then the relationship between them and Yunshi was deepening, and even the color of the threads seemed to have changed slightly. I never heard of this evolutionary direction. Yunshi found that he had woven the web, but he himself was also caught in the network called the Starwing Knights. Your blessings are very, very precious. Please cherish the opportunity to send your best wishes in the future. I don't refuse seeing more girls joining the Starwing Knights, but please, choose the girls who deserve your blessing. They can be common people who don't have super talents like Miu Miu and Robin, but they can't be shallow ladies from noble families. If you really want to choose new members, then I'll recommend them to you. It was not selfish for Hua Yu to recommend the girls she knew. For Mai, who was bound to have a great future, the initial team was very important. The girls she wanted to recommend were not only beautiful and well-behaved, but also were the ones who were really attracted by Mai. In addition, they all had the same characteristics, that was, because of good nutrition and excellent exercise from childhood, their bodies were perfect, and the size of their breasts was far above average. Well, that was the criterion for Hua Yu to choose new members. Whoever can't even reach the standard figure has no chance of joining the Starwing Knights. The multi-headed demon dragon's blood was just a slim, unrealistic hope. The real talent is actually visible and tangible. Instead of pursuing unrealistic hope, Hua Yu preferred to recruit new members who had shown their talents. After all, Mai really likes big tits, doesn't she? I see. In the future, I will consider the candidates of the Starwing Knights carefully. After being preached to by Hua Yu, Yunshi surrendered by raising both hands. To discuss the size of breasts, the age of marriage, whether or not they have sisters, and the situations of their families, it was too shameful for Yunshi. Hua Yu, how many people have you investigated? How can you know their interests, hobbies, and even the size of their breasts clearly? What a terrible action force it is. The leader of the Starwing Knights is too terrible. So, Mai, how many more people can you give your blessings to? All of a sudden, Hua Yu asked a crucial question. Oh, there are still dozens of. Yunshi covered his mouth. Wow, I almost spoke my biggest secret out. Although Hua Yu thought that it was a kind of blessing, the number of seeds was still the greatest secret he had. So much. Hua Yu was shocked. She personally felt how powerful Mai's blessing was. In her eyes, even if Mai could only give one person this blessing, it could be regarded as a miracle. The fact that Mai gave all the members of the Starwing Knights her blessings had surpassed the common sense of the world in Hua Yu's eyes, which also made her more grateful to Mai. If she hadn't met Mai, her white golden rose bloodline wouldn't even been awakened. Her future would probably be just to marry a family in the Western God's domain, which was an inevitable fate of common descendants of the Hua family. It was with Mai's blessing that she could awaken her bloodline, obtaining the power to change her destiny. Her gratitude to Mai was far beyond what could be described by words. Mai's blessing was like a key to open the door of the new world, which made her enter a more colorful world. That is to say, your remaining blessings can even create new Starwing Knights. Who are you? Urgently wanted to know how many miracles Mai could still create. Well, probably, Yunshi sighed. Now that the secret was exposed, it was no longer a secret. Who are you thought that they were blessings? It wasn't wrong. He couldn't tell anyone that they were actually his seeds, which could only be bred by the will of the stars. Even the battle god seed he obtained from his teacher, Cassina the battle god, was essentially just a crystallization of energy, while Yunshi's seed could enhance a person's talent and potential, and would continue to grow with his own growth. This power was even beyond the legend rank. It was the greatest gift of the stars to the newborn starchild. Perhaps the initial seed may not be strong enough, but the growth potential of this power system was infinite. Share and spread his own seeds, and then get infinite power from the seeds that spread out. This was the miracle that the stars had created for Yunshi. Hua Hua's sword skill talent. The twin witches' mentality. Hua Yu and Xiao Cao's fighting talent. Miu Miu's diamond body. The practice experience from all the members of the Starwing Knights. The more seeds he shared, the stronger Yunshi was. The more he used this ability, the more he could feel. This ability is too powerful, so let others think it is a blessing. Mai, you are really great. It was a real surprise to know that Mai's remaining blessings could create new Starwing Knights. She thought that Mai couldn't use her blessings too many times at first. Now, she needed to change her plan. Mai can indeed create miracles. Well, in this case, I think I need to revise the plan. Actually, there are also some good girls I didn't mention before. As the leader of the Starwing Knights, how could she turn a blind eye to talented girls? The reason she didn't mention them just now was because she estimated that the remaining blessings Mai could use wouldn't be too many, so she only chose those big tits noble girls. However, there were not many big tits noble girls in the Sword Palace originally, and after her selection, there were very few candidates. If she ignored the requirement of big tits, they were indeed a lot of talented but flat-chested civilian girls. Since Mai had more blessings than she had expected, then she could also give these civilian girls an opportunity. How do you know so clearly? Yunshi was shocked. Originally, Hua Yu not only knew the information of noble girls well, but also knew the information of civilian girls clearly. From their birthplace to the sword skills they were good at, their heights, weights, and even whether they had marriage contacts, she collected all the girls' information. The leader of the Starwing Knights was too terrible. I have my secret channel, said Hua Yu. Under her large and snow-white right breast, an amber-colored holy beetle was firmly attached to the soft and smooth skin. Well, choosing this holy beetle as my servant is too convenient. 13 people. They were the final candidates Hua Yu chose to be the new members of the Starwing Knights. For this, she had collected the information of almost all the disciples in the White Lotus Sword Palace. What they had in common was that all of them had applied for membership of the Starwing Knights, and all of them had a special feeling for Mai. In other words, they were the girls with the symptoms of Mai poisoning. From this point of view, they had the qualifications to become new members of the Starwing Knights. Without this advantage, even a genius like Xia Ling, the princess of the Great Xia Empire, couldn't join the Starwing Knights. After all, the full name of the Starwing Knights was Mai's Starwing Knights. Did I make a terrible mistake? Looking at the information of the alternate members sent by Hua Yu, Yunshi's headache grew worse and worse. 4 noble girls from 4 families in different gods' domains. Well, this was actually a feature of the endless gods' domain era. Even before the age of the Star Bridges, the families at the top of their respective gods' domains had known that no one should put all of their eggs into the same basket. At their height, they would make the worst-case scenario plans for their families in advance. Before the first Star Bridge was built, they would spread the families' branches all over their gods' domains, and even changed the names of the branches of their families, leaving only the most secret inheritance. In this way, even if the main family was involved in unpredictable disasters and was totally destroyed, the family would always have a way to continue, until the day when the family's glory could be restored. After the star bridges were built and entered the endless gods' domains era, these big families had brought this practice to the extreme. Not only in the gods' domains where they lived, but also in the most remote gods' domains. They would settle their branches there, opening up new lands. Because there were more opportunities in the new gods' domains, some frustrated children of their families would even voluntarily apply to start new family branches in these remote gods' domains. It must be said that these ancient families do have their own unique way of survival. At this moment, the 4 candidates of the Starwing Knights were from 4 different gods' domains. They were all from the Western gods' domain, but their families had branches in the White Lotus Sword domain, and they had a good friendship with Hua Yu's family. It was because of this that they knew what earth-shaking changes have taken place inside of Hua Yu's body, and what an amazing miracle the legendary Mai's blessing was. As for Hua Yu's recruiting them into the Starwing Knights, wasn't only because they had big tits, but also because they had sharp observational skills. Excellent talent, clear world outlook, coupled with a keen sense of new trends, they were worthy of being White Lotus Sword domain's most outstanding elites in all senses. If it hadn't been for the sudden rise of the Starwing Knights, they would have been the proudest disciples of the White Lotus Sword Palace. After the White Lotus secret treasure appeared, they also received invitations from various forces, but none of them said yes. They were waiting for an answer from the Starwing Knights. Which god's domain? Night god's domain? Yunshi looked at the list in his hand. Among the 4 candidates, 3 were from the Night god's domain, where Hua Yu's main family was located. The Night god's domain was a super god's domain even in all the Western gods' domains. Known as the Sword of the Western gods' domain, it had a large number of legendary knights whose history could be traced back to the most ancient era. The remaining one was from the mysterious Witch god's domain, which was a special god's domain famous for various witches there. In that god's domain, the desire for bloodline power transcended everything. It was the homeland of all witches. Why did a witch come to the Sky Sword god's domain and stay in the small White Lotus Sword domain? Yunshi suddenly had a feeling that it was probably because the small White Lotus Sword domain was unusual. Recalling all the things he had experienced, none of them would normally happen in such a small sword domain. Moreover, according to the information provided by Hua Yu, it seemed that the 3 ladies from the Night God's domain and the witch had formed a small group and run a shop called Knights and Magic on the street outside the White Lotus Sword Palace. This shop often sold rare magic handicrafts and fine weapons from the Western God's domain and had something of a reputation in the sword tip area. Now, because house prices in the sword tip area had risen incredibly, the price of their small shop had also risen hundreds of times. Apart from this, they were still disciples studying in the White Lotus Sword Palace. Because of this, countless forces enthusiastically recruited them, and even their families had asked them to return to the Western God's domain. However, the 4 of them all chose to refuse, neither to sell the Knights and Magic shop on the street, nor to accept orders from their families to leave, but have been awaiting an answer from the Starwing Knights. Why are they so persistent? The Starwing Knights is only a temporary group of girls. Yunshi looked at their information and felt a little headache. In his mind, he was somewhat impressed by this small group called Knights and Magic. Among the noble ladies of the White Lotus Sword domain, the 4 often gathered together for tea. He remembered that 3 of them were always armed in armor, and there was always a little girl with a broomstick and pointed hat following behind them. So, she's not such a little girl. Yunshi looked at the papers. Witches didn't represent their appearance according to age, but shape their appearance according to their magic power. Special note, the main characteristics of witches are their breasts. The stronger the magic power they had, the larger their breasts were. The oldest, which was also the woman who had the largest breasts in the world. Generally, not all descendants of witches could awaken their witch bloodline, therefore, even in the witch god's domain, the number of witches wasn't too great. Rose was the name of the little witch candidate of the Starwing Knights. She was still small, but had shown extraordinary potential. Hua Yu's note, P.S. The size of her breasts is hidden by magic. They are much bigger than what they actually look like. So how do you even know such things so vividly, Hua Yu? She was totally speechless about Hua Yu's intelligence-gathering ability. The Knights and Magic group had their tactics. When they hunted monsters, the 3 knights were Rose's guards and Rose's magic was the attack method. The 4 of them all had the potential to enter the hero rank. Especially Rose, because her witch bloodline had been awakened, she had a 100% probability of entering the hero rank. In that small group, she was the core and the 3 knights were her shields. She was their sword attacking with extraordinary force. The magic she was good at, support magic, water breathing, which can let the team dive into the sea to find rare materials, lasting about 3 hours. Attack magic, magic missile, multiple magic missiles, large magic missiles, which can automatically lock on the enemy and can be released all at once. Ultimate skill, magic missile storm, which has greater speed and stronger power. It can easily kill 3 green hippos at the same time. It's enviable. Looking at the little witch's achievements, Yunshi sighed. If it was her in the star trial, she wouldn't need to fight with the green hippo face to face at all, because she could easily kill the green hippo from a distance by using her magic missiles. If he had this ability, he wouldn't have been killed by that green hippo for hundreds of times in the trial. Is this the power of a witch? She hadn't entered the hero rank yet, but had mastered such a strong power. No wonder the other 3 girls would form a team with the youngest witch as the core. She really had that kind of strength and deserved to be treated like that. But why would a witch come to the White Lotus Sword Palace? This is a school where you can study sword skills but not magic. What a strange witch. Cough. Actually, it's because of the orders from my family. Yunshi didn't know since when, suddenly, he noticed a top hat had appeared in his sight. Ah, Rose. Yunshi looked up at the little witch in surprise. She wore a big pointed hat and a pair of big black-framed glasses. Her height was so short that when she sat on chairs, her feet would barely touch the ground. If he hadn't read the information provided by Who Are You, he wouldn't have believed that she was already 16 years old. Well, Who Are You called me, so I came. She said that it's time to do the test for entering the Starwing Knights. Rose walked beside Yunshi. Even with her top hat, she was not as tall as Yunshi's shoulder. You can imagine how delicate she was. In fact, many people thought that she was the child of a tutor from Western God's domain. They didn't suspect that this little girl was a disciple of the White Lotus Sword Palace and also a genuine witch. Even in the Western God's domain, witches were rare. The vast majority of human beings in the Western God's domain wouldn't see any real witches in their lifetime. The test of entering the Starwing Knights, Yunshi complained in his heart. Well, Who Are You was indeed a girl who could do this. However, to be honest, Yunshi's heart also beat slightly faster when he carefully looked at the little witch who was trying to follow his steps. Despite the big black-framed glasses and the old-fashioned pointed hat, the witch girl had snow-white skin that common human beings couldn't have. Plus, with her small and lovely figure, she looked like a living doll, giving him a delicate feeling. Of course, if many humans thought that witches were weak and dared to do anything to them, they wouldn't even have time to regret. Witches' magic would teach them what true power was. Why do you want to join the Starwing Knights? Yunshi pulled Rose's hand and felt the soft, warm hand, asking curiously. Because. Mai's body, no, your body, smells good. Rose hesitated for a moment, but still told the truth. Besides, Mai's bread is delicious. Who gave you bread? Yunshi quickly scanned several suspects in his mind, and finally locked his target on the leader of the Starwing Knights. Who are you? It's not right to tempt a young girl with bread. A gentleman wouldn't do this. Oh, Who Are You is a lady, not a gentleman. You're too young to join the Starwing Knights. Yunshi felt that if he agreed to the child's application, he would not be able to be a gentleman the rest of his life. Clearly, she is 16 years old, the same age as himself. Why do I feel guilty when I hold her little hand? She's 16 years old. 16 years old. 16 years old. In a lot of God's domains, it's the legal age to marry and have children. Yunshi constantly reminded himself in his heart. But Miu Miu is younger than me. Rose looked at Yunshi with some impertinence, launching a fatal blow to Yunshi's excuse. Oh. Yunshi remembered that Miu Miu had also joined the Starwing Knights. Her age was younger than Rose and she was still taking basic knowledge courses with the twin witches. No, Now I can't use age as an excuse. Well, then, should I let her join? Actually, her witch bloodline is already a sufficient excuse to let her join. Well, I want to join, and they're with me. Although she was small, Rose was actually the core of the small group Knights and Magic. She looked at Yunshi with expectations, and her small animal-like eyes made Yunshi's heart soften. I'll give you bread, and you give it up. Joining the Starwing Knights is not all good. As a knight, we may encounter dangerous things in the future. Yunshi really didn't want to commit a crime. Looking at Rose's tiny body and her small chest, he felt a very bad itch in his heart. If Hua Yu's information is correct, Rose's flat chest is actually a disguise. It's hard to imagine. No matter how I observe her, she is just a little girl. Is this a genius of witches? Danger is a strong motivation that can let me improve myself. We are working hard to become stronger, so we are not afraid of dangers. Rose stretched out her finger with magical light on her fingertips. I want to learn more. I want to master stronger magic missiles. So, I must join the Starwing Knights. Well, I know you like magic missiles very much. Looking back on Rose's information provided by Hua Yu, Yunshi understood. This girl, once she has a goal, she will never give it up. It's not just me, Lancelot, Mordred, and Alexander want to join the Starwing Knights too. We swore an oath that we will be a team forever. Rose looked at Yunshi with confidence. She seemed to be absolutely confident about their qualifications to join the Starwing Knights. Yunshi couldn't help but read the information provided by Hua Yu again. This time, he read the three knight girls' information carefully. Lancelot, good at swords, axes, and lances. She was the team's brain, and her class was Paladin. Mordred, good at two-handed swords and all kinds of heavy weapons. She was the most powerful attacker in the team, and her class was Berserker. Alexander was a great rider and the support staff of the team. She was the only rider in the team. These three names were said to be legendary heroes in the Western Gods domain, who had left great achievements in history. Numerous parents named their children in their names, especially in the Night Gods domain. Amongst every 10 teenagers, there would be 2 Lancelots and 1 Alexander. But to name their daughters this? Oh, their parents must be serious knight enthusiasts. Unlike Hua Yu, who changed her name after coming to the White Lotus Sword domain. They used their original names in the Night Gods domain. If only looking at these 3 names, Yunshi would have thought they were all energetic young boys. Looking further, Yunshi received more detailed information, as well as the test for entering the Starwing Knights. Hunting mutant green hippos? Looking at the familiar name and a huge green hippo picture, Yunshi's hunter's soul was burning. This green hippo was obviously different from ordinary green hippos. Its huge nostrils, big fangs, and ugly lines on the skin all reminded him that it was a mutant creature. Moreover, the hunting place was not at a swamp or nearby a river, where the habitats of ordinary green hippos were. It was at the seashore. This is a green hippo that can live in the sea. It's so rare and strange. Yes, let's go hunting for the green hippo and bring back its teeth, tail, and meat. Little Rose had courage far beyond her stature. Since this was the test for joining the Starwing Knights, then she would do her best. Yunshi wanted to say something, but finally said nothing and nodded. Well, recently, Teacher Cassina was still drunk in Hydra's wine cellar. It's not a bad idea to follow the small group, observing their hunting. Perhaps they really had the qualifications to join the Starwing Knights. Well, then go. Rose raised her broomstick excitedly and marched forward, then was tripped by the hem of her robe, and fell to the ground violently. Ah! Yunshi quickly caught the little witch in his arms in case that she hit the ground. There was a feeling on his fingertips that was heavy. It was not the flat feeling when he hugged Mew Mew. It's true. This witch's chest is very big. For some reason, the information he read before appeared in his mind. Whoa. Being hugged by Yunshi, Rose was so shy that her body huddled up all over. Her broad robe covered her body like a single sheet, and her little face under her pointed hat had long turned red. Thank you. It was not much louder than a mosquito's noise. If Rose could choose, she would have created a magic space and hid inside of that space for 24 hours. Don't worry, you're still small. Yunshi habitually touched the little witch's head, but the feeling just now still remained on his fingertips. That touch, that softness. Huayu's information wasn't wrong. This little magic girl does have a body completely inconsistent with her small body. But why did she hide it with magic and keep it a secret? No one could tell what she really looked like from her current appearance. And how did Huayu know this secret? Even Yunshi, who felt it with his fingers personally, just now, was still wondering if it was just his imagination. I'm not small. Rose put her arms around her chest as if she was a puppy who pretended to be ferocious. Indeed, they are not small at all. The stronger a witch is, the bigger her breasts would be. If this is true, then, what an amazing genius. Yunshi confirmed once again that Rose was probably the first genius which he had encountered. On the street outside the Sword Palace, in front of a small shop, 3 young female knights who had arrived early saw the little witch's pointed hat and raised their hands together. Rose, this way, this way. Rose, don't go the wrong way. Be quick. Come here, here. It does seem that she often loses her way. Yunshi looked suspiciously at the little witch who was holding his hand. No. It's just because you're too tall. Rose hated her knight team. She didn't admit that she had no sense of direction. It was just because there were too many people taller than her, which blocked her sight. Yes, it's not her fault, it's the world's fault. Why is everyone so tall? Yunshi looked at the 3 knight girls over there and their information naturally appeared in his mind. Lancelot was a 17-year-old paladin and was sent to the White Lotus Sword domain at a very young age. Wearing knight's armor, her full breasts slightly pushed open the chest armor to both sides, revealing the unshielded jade-like skin in it. She was a standard Western beauty with blonde hair and blue eyes and looked a little more mature than her age. It was said that she was good at all weapons, but the most used one was the combination of sword and shield. Mordred had the same blonde hair, but her eyes were slightly red. Her weapons were a 2-handed sword and a huge tower shield. She was also the tallest amongst the 3, about 1.8 meters tall. Although she was a knight, she had Berserker bloodline. Even in the Night God's domain, Berserker bloodline was pretty rare. In addition, the size of her breasts was also the biggest amongst the 3 girls. The last girl was Alexander, the only girl with flaxen-colored hair. Her weapons were a scepter and a buckler. Behind them were caravans especially prepared for hunting. A pair of vigorous horses were beating their noses and kicking their hooves. They were awaiting their departure in full spirit. The combination of paladin, berserker, and rider seemed strange, but that was the feature of knights and magic. This team had made many achievements in the past year, and was also one of the top-ranked mortal adventure teams registered in the Sky Tower. It was precisely because they were so excellent that Huayu agreed to let them do the entrance test. Rose, haven't you lost your way? Lancelot's first sentence had made the little witch cry. I am not a kid, because everyone is too tall. Rose, you were too slow. I almost went to look for you. Mordred didn't pay attention to the others' moods. Her words gave Rose the second blow. Rose, do you take handkerchiefs and bread with you? Alexander's words gave Rose's heart the final blow. I am a witch, not a kindergarten child. Rose was desperate. She's 16, not 6. What's more, lost her way. She only lost her way once or twice in 10 times at most. After all, the knowledge of witches was completely useless for her to find ways in the city. Thank you, Mai. Thank you for agreeing to hold the entrance test. Lancelot smiled at Yunshi after she teased Rose. We will show our strength to you. Even if the green hippo hides under the water, I will catch it and kill it. Mordred promised. Please give us your constructive criticism, Mai. Alexander approached Yunshi curiously, wrinkling her nose with her knowing and burning eyes. The scent of good wine. Mai, do you like to drink too? No, I get drunk easily. I can't drink more than 3 cups of wine per day. That was the truth. Although Hydra said that Yunshi could drink 3 cups of her poisonous wine per day, he actually only drank a cup per day in the secret room where the light ball was. He had to hide. If his teacher Cassina knew about it, he could imagine his miserable end of being imprisoned by his teacher. Only 3 cups. What kind of wine can you get drunk with in 3 cups? Alexander had a keen sense of smell. She was sure that the wine fragrance on Mai was a new wine she didn't know about at all. This unknown wine, even with just a hint of fragrance left, it had made her stomach growl. Is that wine so good, Alexander? Lancelot also came up and looked at Yunshi curiously. Her nose wasn't as good as Alexander's, but she also liked good wines. As for Mordred, there was no need to mention it. She had Berserker bloodline. Naturally, Berserkers liked wines. In stories, Berserkers would even wage a war for drinking. The money that Knight and Magic earned, apart from the money being used to buy magic materials for Rose, were all taken by Alexander to buy wines. Drinking was the hobby of all the members, apart from Rose, of the Knights and Magic group. Although Rose was 16 years old, in their eyes, she was still a child, and children can only drink juice. Yes, my nose can't be mistaken. It's a wine I've never tried before. Alexander's eyes brightened up and gazed at Yunshi with excitement. Her flaxen ponytail flicked from side to side because of excessive excitement. What kind of wine is this? More fierce than agave. Wilder than whiskey. Even the best brandy is not as pure as this is. Why? I've never smelled this kind of wine before. It's clear that it isn't any of the wines sold in the whole of the White Lotus Sword domain. Well, indeed. It isn't the wine of the White Lotus Sword domain, but something brewed by a god. Looking at Alexander's excited face, Yunshi was under tremendous pressure. He forgot that even though he was drinking alone in the secret room that no one could find, there was still a little smell of Hydra's poisonous wine left on his body. Unexpectedly, there was actually someone with such a sharp nose in the world. She could deduce so many things from such a little wine fragrance. Where can I buy this wine, Mai? Alexander came close to Yunshi, and the elastic peaks on her chest pressed on Yunshi's chest, making him a bit out of breath. Well, this. I don't know. It's not a lie. Of course, Hydra's poisonous wine isn't being sold anywhere. And I only drank a small cup of wine. Alexander's face turned so depressed. She found a wine she had never smelled before, but she didn't even know where she could buy it. Oh my God, why is the world so cruel to me? That's all right. As long as you remember the smell, you will be able to taste it one day. Lancelot comforted her. Yes, for the sake of wine, I wouldn't mind walking to the end of the world. In an instant, Alexander had a whole new purpose in life. She raised her head and threw out her chest. I'm Alexander, who collects all the good wines. I said, I really don't know where to buy this wine. Yes, yes. Next time I meet the merchant who sells this wine, I'll leave a cup, no, a bucket for you. Well. Stop smelling, it's embarrassing. Until he got into the chariot and left the street in the sword tip area, Yunshi had to repeat this conversation many times. Oh, my God, why is there such a knight with such a sharp nose? I just drank a cup of Hydra's wine in the secret room, and now I have to give her 100 promises. What's more, Alexander, Mordred, and Lancelot all looked at him with their eyes shining. It was too stressful. Well, wine is not good at all. If I am drunk, I can't use my magic missiles. Finally, it was Angel Rose who saved Yunshi. As the only underage girl in Knights and Magic, Rose, again, I'm 16, she really didn't understand why the 3 knights in the team liked wines so much. Well, let's talk about that unfortunate green hippo. Alexander had to change the topic unwillingly. According to intelligence, this green hippo has been active for a while. It often appears in this area, and this area. Lancelot took out a map and began to work out the hunting plan. What weapon does it use? Still a wooden stick. Mordred licked her lips with an eager look. No, this green hippo has a significantly higher IQ than other green hippos. Its weapon is a giant stone club, which should be a kind of natural obsidian, it found in the sea. Lancelot quickly drew a giant stone club on the paper with a pen. More than that, she also drew the green hippo's outline onto the paper and carefully drew a human nearby it as a comparison. It's about 3-5 meters tall, weighing more than a few tons. It has the ability to dive into the seabed and has a ferocious personality, so I don't recommend attacking it in the sea. The best plan is to trap it on the ground with Rose's magic missiles to kill it. Not only did Lancelot have excellent painting skills, but her strategic thinking ability was also first-rate. She quickly worked out a general plan for the team. The best place to set traps is on this shoal. I've prepared a large chain trigger trap that can instantly create a big pit. It's only a matter of time until we kill the green hippo, as long as we block its way of escape to the sea. This was the first time she joined a team of hunting large monsters. He looked at Lancelot with great curiosity and carefully recorded her plan. It was almost impossible for ordinary people in the White Lotus Sword domain to encounter such a horrible monster, but once you saw such a monster, it normally meant a coming disaster. Any third-ranked monster could easily destroy a small town overnight. If it was a hero-ranked monster like the male fiery dragon she saw before, it could even destroy a country. A large number of these kinds of monsters lived in the wilds of the sword body area, which had become the natural boundary between the sword tip area and the sword handle area. Rose, kill it with a big magic missile. Rose, pay attention to your mana output. Rose, it's up to you. After making a rough plan, the knight's top priority was to coax the most powerful team member, the little witch, Rose. Of course, I am a witch. Only then will Rose feel proud and elated. What's the difference between magicians and witches? In fact, as far as magic itself was concerned, the gap was not very big. Magicians could also use magic that witches could perform. There was no insurmountable boundary between the two. However, there was a decisive difference between magicians and witches. That is, magicians' magic power was basically constant. Take the same magic missile as an example, which was the most basic magic in all magic books. When magicians performed a magic missile, no matter how strong they were, the power of their magic missiles was the same. However, witches could easily break this boundary. Their witch bloodline could let them release more powerful magic missiles. Take Rose's magic missile as an example. The attack power of her magic missile was 12 times stronger than common magic missile. If a magician wanted to learn advanced versions of magic missile such as large magic missile and multiple magic missiles, the magician must reach the hero rank first. However, there was no such restriction on witches. Now Rose was still a mortal, but she could not only use large magic missile and multiple magic missiles, but also could perform magic missile storm. Magicians needed to learn magic, then they could master it. Witches only needed to practice magic to strengthen magic, completely ignoring the learning process. Because they were born with powerful magic, which came from their witch bloodline. For them, mastering the magic in the air was as natural as breathing. Almost all witches could easily enter the hero rank, while human beings struggled their best to crowd onto the single wooden bridge leading to the entrance of the hero rank. Countless geniuses failed at the entrance of the hero rank and could see no hope in their lives. Perhaps witches couldn't master as much magic as magicians could learn, but their talents were far better than any human magicians. Until when it came to entering the legend rank, the witch bloodline couldn't help witches too much, and by that time, human beings had the hope of catching up with witches. Magic is the embodiment of wisdom. It cannot tolerate any mistakes. For the apprentice magicians, they need to give their whole attention to the release of any magic. Once a magic model is wrong, magic regurgitation could easily kill them. This kind of thing never happens to the witches. Once they are born and have opened their eyes, they are naturally immersed in the sea of mana, naturally learn how to absorb the mana from the air, and naturally resonate with their witch bloodline. Witches would never be exposed to magic regurgitation. Even if their magic was forcibly interrupted by an enemy, it would only deplete their mana but wouldn't cause any damage to their bodies. Not only that, when witches are in high spirits, the power of their magic would increase significantly because of the blood resonance effect. If they were facing a desperate situation or if their emotions were in an extreme state, the magic they could release would even be far beyond the limit of their rank. In the history of Witch God's domain, there was a mortal ranked witch who performed a legend-ranked magic spell because of crushing despair. On the night of her marriage, a war broke out and she lost her lover, she opened the door of the taboo by offering herself as a sacrifice in despair. Overnight, monsters emerged from that door and ruined the entire country. This was the power of the witch bloodline. That was why Lancelot, Mordred, and Alexander all cheered for Rose before they went hunting monsters. As long as Rose was in high spirits, her magic power would rise sharply. Even if there were 10 green hippos, she could easily handle them. Well, this green hippo is dead. By looking at Rose's proud face, Lancelot knew that there wouldn't be an accident this time. A mutant green hippo is nothing in front of Rose when she is in such an excited mood. About 3 hours later, they arrived at their destination, a corner of the wilderness in the Sword Body area. Splash! Splash! The seawater beat against the uneven rocks, stirring up froth all over. She sat alone on a coconut tree about 10 meters tall, looking at the knights and magic team that had been ambushed hundreds of meters away. Like the most standard formation in the textbook, the 3 knights protected the little witch in a triangular formation. No attack from any direction could surpass the defense of the 3. As for Rose, she was meditating with her eyes closed. Only then could she really feel that this little witch was not a spoiled young lady, but an excellent hunter who had experienced all kinds of battles with the 3 knights. There were no wars in the White Lotus sword domain. Therefore, exploring the Sword Body area, hunting monsters in the wilderness, or searching for treasures were the most common tasks of the adventure teams in this remote sword domain. When she was a child, he also occasionally dreamed of such a free life, but the reality is that the mortal world does not need such a strong adventure team. The people who had this strength usually went into the military or became the gatekeepers of big families. Only in the sword tip area did these teams with extraordinary strength have meaning for any existence. Boom! 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 From the sea, there was a sudden, unnatural noise of bombs. It's coming. Get ready, let's perform Plan 1. Lancelot took a deep breath and grabbed a white pebble up from the beach. The huge figure of the green hippo emerged little by little from the sea. The green hippo was taller and stronger than Lancelot's sketch. Its skin was covered with patterns that ordinary green hippos didn't have, and the giant stone club in its hand was mosaicked with many strange crystal fragments. Strange. It's not the same as in the intelligence report? Alexander frowned. The green hippo's information provided by the Hunters Guild was very different from what the real green hippo was they saw with their own eyes. Looks like this guy's a little bigger than we thought. Mordred compared her two-handed sword with the height of the green hippo and affirmed that the green hippo was absolutely over 4 meters tall, much larger than what they were told. The situation has changed. Let's perform Plan 2. It was very common that problems arose during hunting, and Lancelot was naturally prepared for this. Anything could happen in the wilderness. It wasn't surprising to meet a hero-ranked monster when a team was hunting a common monster in the wilderness. At least, even though the green hippo's size got bigger and its weapon looked stronger, it was still a green hippo and hadn't become anything else. As long as it was still a green hippo, Rose could kill it. Her attack power was far beyond the mortal rank and approached the hero rank. The original plan was to lure the green hippo into the trap and then let Rose attack it with her magic missile. Now the plan has changed. I'm going to attract the green hippo's attention. You take Rose back. Lancelot rushed out without hesitation and threw the white pebble at the green hippo from 100 meters away. The effect of the white pebble was instant. The green hippo was provoked and burst into a rage and rushed towards Lancelot at a roaring pace. Combination. Lancelot used an incredible way to assemble her sword and shield into a strange hammer. With flexible steps, Lancelot rushed to the angry green hippo and skipped around to the green hippo's back. Boom! The green hippo hit the ground with the stone club, making a big hole in the ground and splashing numerous gravel about. Lancelot firmly grasped the hammer in her hand, swung it and gave the green hippo's body a powerful hammer blow. Bang! The hammer struck the green hippo's thick skin and made a muffled sound. No. The hammer can't hurt it. Lancelot dropped the hammer directly and pulled out a bayonet from her waist and rolled over on the ground. The green hippo held its giant stone club in both hands and slashed at her. Lancelot dodged the attack and held the bayonet specially made for armor piercing, instantly piercing the green hippo's body like dozens of swords. The attacks were still ineffective. There were only a few white spots on the green hippo's thick skin, which couldn't be found without careful observation. Roar! The green hippo roared, and the sand around it was in an explosion. It rose and floated in a circle in the air. Mortal ranked physical attacks are invalid. Rose, use your biggest magic missile. Hey, silly hippo, taste this. Rose proudly lifted her broomstick as a purple crystal emerged from the middle of it. Magic missile. One 30 centimeters long purple missile after another shot out from the little witch's broomstick. Regardless of size or release speed, they were far more powerful than common magic missiles. This was no more intuitive difference between witch and magician. With the same 100 mana, a magician could release about 10 magic missiles, while the little witch Rose could release 100 magic missile. What's more, her magic missile not only had 3 times the flying speed, but also had 3 times the attack power. Boom! 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 The crisp sound of explosions burst on the green hippo's body one after another. Hundreds of large magic missiles hit its body in a second as a purple halo spread like fireworks. This was the little witch Rose's masterpiece, multiple magic missiles. If it was a common third-ranked green hippo, it would have been blown to pieces already. However, the mutant green hippo was clearly far stronger than other green hippos. Although its thick skin was being pitted by the magic missiles, there was no fatal wound. Whoa, it's a foul to be so thick. Rose looked at the green hippo with a little headache. This fellow is too strong. Did it eat something strange? Mordred complained. As a top-ranked mortal hunting team, this wasn't the first time for them to hunt a green hippo. The green hippo was only slightly injured by Rose's magic missiles. Theoretically, that shouldn't have happened. Rose had devoted almost all her energy to the practice of magic missiles. Her attack power should far surpass the defensive power of any hero-ranked monster's skin. Lancelot, be careful, it's going to go mad. Along with Mordred, Alexander protected Rose while she leaves. Boom! The injured green hippo kicked a big stone towards them. The several tons of stone flew like a ball under the feet of the green hippo. Just as witches' magic talents were far stronger than mortals, the green hippo's strength was also at the top of all third-ranked monsters. Even though the green hippo's body was too large and its speed was too slow, the green hippo was still one of the most formidable monsters in the third rank. Its thick skin could make many people feel helpless. As a monster who had left a particularly painful memory for Yunshi in the Star Trial, this monster was not friendly at all. When it rushed at them rampaging, it was like a heavy tank that could crush everything. Are you okay? Yunshi watched the green hippo and felt worried for the small team. It doesn't matter. Believe us, if we can't even beat a green hippo down, we will feel ashamed of ourselves. Lancelot wiped her sweat and raised her bayonet. That's right. We're going to play here. Mordred removed the tower shield from behind her and entered a full-armed form. No matter how violent the monster is, without wisdom, it's only a target being hunted. Alexander whistled, dismantled her scepter and revealed her chain sword. My magic missile can be more powerful. Rose pouted and rubbed the purple crystal, and then grasped the broomstick with both hands. Even though they were facing the mutant green hippo who had gone mad, the 3 knights still took the initiative to attack. Sometimes, the best defense is to attack. In the face of such a super monster, being blindly defensive was not feasible. They must orient the situation to their own advantage. Hey! Mordred raised her tower shield and provoked it. Come on, you mindless monster. Come at me. Huh. With a roar, the furious green hippo rushed directly towards Mordred with thunderous footsteps. Chance. Alexander whipped the chain sword and hit the green hippo from 10 meters away. The strange chain sword tore a big hole in the wound caused by Rose's magic missile, causing the green hippo to bleed endlessly. A half-meter-long wound was a fatal wound for humans, but for a mutant green hippo, it was just a scratch and made it more ferocious. The fierce green hippo was getting faster, and the huge stone club in its hand gave them a strong feeling of pressure. You shall not pass. Putting the tower shield into the ground, Mordred took a deep breath and contracted all her muscles. Boom! The green hippo's stone club directly deformed Mordred's tower shield, and even Mordred herself was stunned by the sparks that flew before her eyes. But even though Mordred's hands were bleeding, she still firmly held the shield and withstood the attack and didn't take a step back. Shuffle. Alexander's chain sword was thrown again from an almost impossible angle and hit on the green hippo's body. Right now. Lancelot held an armor-piercing sword and appeared behind the green hippo again, hitting the green hippo with her powerful strength. The sharp armor-piercing sword penetrated the green hippo's buttocks and punctured through its intestines. Looking at Lancelot's move, Yunshi felt like clenching his buttocks. That must be painful. It's so fast, so accurate, so cruel. Moogar. The green hippo uttered a sad scream, and the big club in its hand thundered heavily on the ground. Jump. The three knights leaped backward together. Rose's magic trap was triggered. Boom. The ground beneath the green hippo collapsed without warning, and the magic trap was launched perfectly. This wasn't a simple trap but a chain trap. When the green hippo fell down and hit the ground, it was bombed by a flame bomb first, then attacked by frost. In such a situation, even the green hippo's thick skin that neither swords nor spears could stab became fragile. At the same time, being protected by the three knights, Rose was finally ready for her ultimate skill. Magic Missile Storm. Compared with the multiple magic missiles just now, the performance of the Magic Missile Storm was much more exaggerated. The number of magic missiles released this time was 3,000. This is a number that can make all mortal magic apprentices feel helpless. Moreover, Rose didn't just use the Magic Missile Storm one time, but 3 times. A total of 9,000 magic missiles. If this was a battlefield, the magic missile storms could eliminate an entire army in an instant. In the face of such horrible large-scale attack magic, the army of mortals was no different from rice straws waiting to be mowed. The magnificent magic missile storm first crossed the distance of hundreds of meters within 3 seconds, then all hit on the green hippo's body. Boom, 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 boom. Like a symphony of death, 9,000 magic missiles were bombarded on the green hippo's huge body and it never stood up again. Yay! We win! Rose's magic missile storm is awesome. The green hippo is dead. Lancelot, Mordred, and Alexander cheered. No matter how many times they looked at it, Rose's magic missile storm was always so exaggerated. 3 rounds of 3,000 magic missiles, it was probably the strongest attack mortals could perform. A mutant green hippo was nothing in front of such an attack. That's terrific. Even Yunshi felt that the attack was a little too exaggerated. It was absolutely the strongest magic he had ever seen. Because of the limitations of flesh and blood, most mortals could only perform magic tricks such as sleight of hand and luminous gaze. Only after stepping into the hero rank could one perform the extraordinary power of magic or sword skill. This was common sense to everyone. It was almost impossible for human beings to perform such horrible magic in the mortal rank. Hey, there's nothing in the world that magic missiles can't solve. Rose cleaned her hat and proudly raised her chest. If 1 magic missile is not enough, then I will use 100, 1,000 magic missiles. If 1 round is not enough, then I will perform the magic for 3 rounds, 10 round. Among all magic, Rose's favorite was magic missile. She could shoot with her eyes closed without aiming. With the increase of her proficiency, she could shoot faster and more accurately, and the power of each shot could also be increased indefinitely. The art of magic missiles was the world Rose was intoxicated with. She had a dream that one day her magic missile skills could reach the realm of God. The green hippo was first burned, then frozen, and finally brutally murdered by 9,000 magic missiles. The green hippo's body lost its breath at the bottom of the magic trap, and the huge stone club rolled aside. It's finally dead. Lancelot threw several pebbles at the green hippo and confirmed that it had died. It's a heavy stone club. Mordred jumped into the trap and picked up the giant stone club, grabbing the tail of the club with both hands. Yay! We completed the test of the Starwing Knights. Alexander laughed. My magic missile is the first in the world. Rose raised her broomstick and waved it proudly. Just then, the mutant green hippo, whose whole body had been pierced and its heart exploded, suddenly stood up. What? Lancelot opened her eyes wide. She confirmed that the green hippo had died. Why could it stand up again? Impossible. Mordred dropped the club and stood instinctively in front of Rose to protect her. Why? Alexander swung her chain sword, trying to block any counterattacks from the green hippo. Ah! Rose let out a scream and fired another 100 magic missiles. But this time, the magic missiles passed directly through the green hippo as if they had infiltrated a gel. In front of the four, the green hippo's body began to twist and melt, revealing its true face. It was a mass of transparent, green jelly-like substances or life. Slime. 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 The three knights recognized the real identity of the thing at a glance. Wow, it's a mutant giant slime, not a mutant green hippo. Yunshi jumped down from the coconut tree immediately, but unfortunately, he was still a step late. The giant green slime, after transforming back to its original shape, immediately spewed out a large amount of solution. The sticky green solution shot at the knights and magic team and glued them all together. We are finished. Lancelot was distressed. What a fatal mistake this was. What's wrong with this slime? Mordred was equally helpless, and her strength couldn't do anything in the face of the green solution. No way. Alexander looked at her clothes with tears in her eyes. Her knight's armor was melting. Whoop, whoop, what's wrong with this slime? Why can't the magic missiles hurt it? Rose burst into tears as her pointed hat was being eaten by the green slime. The girl's skin was exposed little by little in front of Yunshi. Slime was one of the weakest monsters in the food chain of all gods' domains. Except for their super-adaptability that could survive in any environment, they were good for nothing. If we take the standard value of an adult man's strength as 5, then a slime's strength was not even more than 1. Even a child could bully a slime and it has no power to fight back. Slow speed moving and low attack power, main food is various decaying organic matter. Most slimes were extremely weak, very few mutant slimes could develop special abilities. The slime that appeared in front of the knights and magic team was such a special case of 1 in a billion. Lancelot's sword. Mordred's shield. Alexander's scepter. 3 high-quality weapons were melted in a few seconds by the solution of the slime. It was probably not with the acid in its body, because no acid could melt their weapons so quickly. It was a kind of devouring talent, just like Rose's magic talent. This was the slime's special ability. However, it seemed that this ability was only activated by inorganic substances, so although their weapons, armor, and clothes were dissolved, Lancelot, Mordred, and Alexander weren't injured and just being bound by this strange solution, unable to move. When their armor was completely melted, the girls' skins were completely exposed. Lancelot had a perfect figure. With blonde hair and blue eyes, beneath her slender, soft neck were round and smooth shoulders. With fullness in her chest, her waist showed a perfect curve. Because of regular physical exercise, her buttocks were beautiful and smooth. Together with snow-white slender legs, even if they were closed vigorously, Yunshi could also vaguely see the girl's paradise. No, Yunshi, stop. You can't look at it. Even so, his man's instinct was uncontrollable. After struggling, he laboriously moved his eyes away from Lancelot. Compared with Lancelot's jade-like skin with a sense of sanctity and inviolability, Mordred's well-trained body was strong and powerful, full of healthy beauty. Even though she was half-bent, her lower abdomen showed no excess fat. The muscles in her waist and abdomen fluctuated like waves, the curves of her thighs were exquisite and delicate. She opened her arms in front of Rose with a firm look on her face. Even in such an embarrassing situation, she didn't forget to be the shield of the little witch. Alexander was also standing in front of Rose like a shield. Her flaxen braids slightly covered her naked body, but also made her curves more prominent. Her skin was neither the pure white of Lancelot's skin nor the healthy color of Mordred's skin, but a color between them, emitting a special tropical temptation. However, after losing all their clothes, the biggest change happened on the little witch, who had been desperately hiding her secret. She really had magic in her chest. It was a bandage engraved with mysterious runes, which almost completely wrapped the little witch's whole chest. The magic of the bandage tightly bound the little witch's chest, so no one could find out the real size of the little witch's breasts. It was not until this moment that the bandage melted under the slime's solution that Yunshi really knew why Hua Yu would specifically notify him about them in the little witch's information. Too big. Yunshi did not imagine that the little witch, whose height only reached his waist, would have such a magnificent chest. That pair of snow-white rabbits were so beautiful that it shook his eyes and heart. Only when the bandage was melted off, did the lovely rabbits rush out of bondage and move about in the wind. Not only the shape was perfect, but also the feel was absolutely first class from the beautiful curve. If we average the fighting power of common noble girl's chest measurement at 3,000, then Lancelot's fighting power was 5,000, Alexander's is about 6,000, and Mordred's about 8,000. As for Rose, her fighting capability is absolutely over 10,000. Even in all the Starwing Knights, probably only Hua Yu and Ling Ling were bigger than her. From the viewpoint of growth, she could certainly become a great witch in the future. No wonder that even Hua Yu was shocked and accepted her application of joining the Starwing Knights. The potential of this small team was really great. Especially the little witch Rose, whether it was her battle talent or chest measurement, she could cause most of the girls of the Starwing Knights to feel despair. So round, so slippery, so white, so sturdy, even the pair of pink buds were flawless, like the world's most beautiful works of art. Whoa, the little witch Rose held her pair of tall and round white rabbits in her arms, rippling out a fascinating arc as her body trembled. Her white face turned burning red and her cherry-like mouth was half open and half closed, so lovely when she cried. No, it's a crime if I continue to look at this scene. Yunshi drew out the twin swords from his back and rushed towards the mutant slime like the wind. When the emerald slime noticed Yunshi's move, it spat out a large amount of transparent solution again. Don't use the same skill twice. Yunshi wouldn't repeat the same mistake the Knights and Magic team made. His body flipped in the air and flew directly to the slime's head. The twin swords flashed. He used Flying Swallow Sword, which was Hua Hua's proudest sword skill. Flying Swallow tenfold attack. The mutant slime's huge body was instantly cut into dozens of jellies, like being cut by a fruit knife. But in the next instant, the fragments of the slime's body ejected more solutions, shooting overwhelmingly towards Yunshi. Yunshi quickly flew higher to avoid this wave of evil solution. He didn't want to test whether his clothes would melt when they met the solution. Even if his clothes wouldn't melt, he didn't want his body to be covered with the solution. For creatures living on the ground, species that can attack from the air are like cheetahs. If I could use Rose's magic missiles, I would be able to completely destroy these fragments in a flash. Yunshi thought so and brandished his sword again. After 3 rounds of solution spraying, the slime finally became exhausted. The dozens of fragments of its body began to squirm together, trying to merge and become one again. Separation and combination were also one of the slime's special abilities. This giant slime was obviously an elite above all elites. However, when it met Yunshi who could fight in the sky, it encountered its natural enemy. Yunshi once fought against the child of slime, Shea Longness the sky sword in the water god's world. Naturally, he knew the weaknesses of slimes very well. They had extremely low mobility. Even if they had extraordinary powers, they were easy to deal with if nobody controlled them. It was precisely because of such fatal defects that the slime race yearned for the birth of their god. Only under the control of Shea Longness did the slime race have the potential for war. This giant slime was apparently a survivor who escaped from the water god's world after the final war. Flying Swallow. The twin swords chopped down. Without solution spraying, and the giant slime wasn't strong enough to digest the twin swords, it was cut up bit by bit until finally, Yunshi found its core. It was a small, soft, and elastic gemstone, only about the size of a pebble, and had the same color as the slime's body. If it weren't for Yunshi's rich experience and familiar hand feel, he wouldn't have found the gemstone that was quietly shrinking and trying to hide. It's you. Familiar hand feel, familiar elasticity, familiar temperature. Yunshi seemed to have returned to the water god's world, returning to the time he caught green slimes everywhere together with Yun-Q on the island. This slime's special ability was to devour equipment but not eat people, The mutant green hippo was actually just the green slime's host body. After the death of the green hippo, the slime took its original form and instinctively began to devour their equipment to supplement its lost vitality, as Yunshi naturally understood when he gained the slime's core. Speaking of this, he and slimes did have an indissoluble bond. In the water god's world, he once had a special slime bracelet, which was later taken away by Shea Longness the Sky Sword, but now he obtained it again. Yes, the slime's core in Yunshi's hands now was the original prototype of the slime bracelet in the water god's domain. It seemed that Shea Longness' aura had disappeared completely. It had become a common slime who wandered around this strange coast, and in order to survive, it parasitized the green hippo's body. The Knights and Magic team did kill the mutant green hippo, but lost to the giant slime, who was once a fragment of Shea Longness the Sky Sword. Although it had become smaller, Yunshi still felt the familiar when kneading and pinching it. We've had bad luck. Why does this place have such a mutant slime that doesn't exist in any records? Mordred complained and wiped her body. Because no one knows, so it's called an accident. Alexander untied her braids. Her long flaxen hair hung down to her waist, her long legs folded together, and she was lazily basking in the sun. I feel that this thing can't be so simple. Lancelot washed her beautiful long blonde hair and smelt herself. 3 naked girls. Summer sun. Gold, flaxen, snow white, black, all kinds of colors. Why are you so defenseless? Aren't you noble girls from famous big families? Yunshi turned his back to the 3 knights and kept kneading and pinching the green slime in his hands. Whoa! My bandage dissolved. What do I do? Without that, my sisters will kill me. Crouched up in her spare robe which she just put on, Rose had a helpless look on her face as if she just saw the end of the world. Is that bandage so important? Yunshi asked with curiosity. Well, that's my most precious magic item. My sisters told me that I should never take that bandage off, or many people would come to kill me. Especially witches. My sisters have always warned me that I should never take off the bandage in front of other witches before I had become a great witch, otherwise, something very horrible would happen. Oh, I see. Is it jealousy? If the other witches could see the size of her breasts, they would kill her out of jealousy. Sure enough, even amongst witches, Rose's talent is at the superclass. If Who Are You was right, the bigger the breasts were, the higher the magic power the witch could have, then the little witch Rose's talent was super. Fortunately, no matter how strong their talents were, they couldn't be stronger than Hua were. In this case, Yunshi could accept the appearance of geniuses. Don't worry, the Starwing Knights will accept you. No one will be jealous of you. After kneading his trophy again, Yunshi made a decision. At the same time as Yunshi made his choice, the 3 night girls finally put on their spare clothes and came out of the sea. Mai, come here. Mai, the temperature here is moderate. Mai, please wash Rose clean. They looked at Yunshi and the little witch with meaningful eyes. Yunshi wanted to shout. How can you be so defenseless and take a bath in front of me? Why do I have to comfort the little witch Rose and help her wash her body? The world is so strange. Whoa. Rose was still crying sadly. She was curled up in her spare big magic robe like a rabbit hiding in her hole. Next to her, the 3 girls who had put on their night armor were comforting the little witch. Rose, it's not your fault. It's because the slime was too strong. Your magic missile is still the best. Let's slaughter the dragon and conquer the world together in the future. Rose still sobbed. Her hands clasped around her huge chest, which was totally out of line with her body shape. It was too big and too heavy for her petite body. It wasn't a problem when she was wrapped in the bandage, because the bandage had a special magic power which could greatly reduce the weight and cover the size of her breasts. Now, the bandage was eaten by the slime, and the little witch, Rose, felt wrong all over. In the past, only when she took a bath with Lancelot, Mordred, and Alexander would she untie the bandage. Apart from the bathing time, she would never untie the bandage. For her, the bandage had almost become a part of her body. They are so heavy. Ooh. Mai, take her to the bath. Just wash Rose clean, and she'll regain her confidence. We'll find a way to find a new bandage for Rose. The three night girls looked at Yun-shi with an expression "Great hero, please save the world" on their faces. So why do you ask me to take care of Rose so naturally? What's more, she looks so small, but has such a pair of plump fruit. I can barely preserve my sanity. Hurry up. Go. Take care of Rose. Let's prepare a new bandage for Rose. Don't be hesitant, you can do it. The three girls pushed the little witch to Yun-shi and didn't give him any chance to refuse. Well, Rose, Yun-shi really has little experience in caring for such a young child. What's more, it's such a big-breasted child. It's really a crime. Whoa. Does my dislike me? I lost to the slime, so I can't join the Starwing Knights? Rose looked at Yun-shi with tears in her eyes and despair on her face. Looking at her crying face, Yun-shi could not say the word no. All right. Yun-shi felt that this was fate. The girl asked him to take a bath, and he couldn't expose his gender and identity. What else can he do? I'm desperate, too. Whoa. Rose shrugged her nose, and her little face flushed with shame. A child needs only a kiss and a hug to recover quickly. Knowing this, the three night girls gave Rose to Yun-shi without hesitation. They would not have thought that the black-haired maid's true identity was an energetic 16-year-old boy. Looking at Rose's scarlet face and shy eyes, his heart couldn't help but beat faster. Take the little witch to the beach and try not to look at her body. Yun-shi quickly took off her broad magic robe and the time to suffer began. The girl's white body had soft, tender skin. The pair of huge peaks floated in the water with a fatal temptation. Of course, Yun-shi didn't see it with his eyes, because he had actively shielded his vision and began to learn how to use breathing to sense the air around him. It's the last resort. If he opened his eyes at this time, he would be a real criminal. Nevertheless, his hand still inadvertently touched places he should not touch. In the clear seawater, the full peaks were tender like tofu and slippery like oil. With a gentle pinch on the belly of the finger, the fruit deformed freely in the palms. It was a tenderness that was enough to arouse the desire of the male animal, which made him feel pity for her, but also, he couldn't help wanting to ravage her again and again. Clearly there was no support, but this pair of peaks had no trace of falling, as firm as they had been cast magic. The lower edge and upper edge maintained a perfect arc, straight and sharp, perfect and incredible. Not only the shape, but also the touch was soft and delicate. Just a gentle pressure, it would sag down, slightly, loosen the grip, and then it would bounce back. Even if he didn't see with his eyes, Yun-shi could fill in the little witch Rose's white body and blushed face in his mind. This soft and delicate body leaned into his arms, the fragrance of her hair, as well as the snow-white delicate skin, all could be mastered with one hand. After taking off her shoes and socks, her snow-white feet were smooth and as tender as snow. What's more, the bared feet often trod on where they shouldn't tread, which made Yun-shi feel suffocated. Although he closed his eyes, he could feel the elongated legs rubbing his unmentionable location with bared feet. The exquisite white feet with round ankles and toes moved and slid curiously around that area. Aho! At the seaside, there was a faint cry of despair from the big grey wolf who stayed alone with the little white rabbit. With great efforts, Yun-shi had washed the tearful little witch clean. Why didn't I feel any problem when I washed Yi Li before? Sure enough, is it all because of that big pair of breasts? Or is it because after the night I spent with the dark elf girl, the world in my eyes had become different? Recalling the secret lesson the teacher had taught him that summer, Yun-shi felt that his life would probably never go back to that age of innocence. Yi Li, I can't give you a bath in the future, because my heart is not pure anymore. After realizing this, Yun-shi felt that he had lost something important. As for the little witch, she was completely restored after bathing. I want to develop magic missiles that can destroy all slimes. Even if slimes can be magically immune, my magic missiles must be able to pierce through them. Rose had set a great goal for her life. She still firmly believed that there was no monster in the world that could not be killed by magic missiles. If not, develop more powerful magic missiles. Eventually, my mage missiles will be able to kill gods. Most witches are such obsessives, as long as they like one thing, they will chase it crazily to the end. They will never change their minds. Once they like something, they will not change their goal even after 1,000 years. For them, the first time of life is the most important, representing the deepest indelible memory. Take a woman named Black Tea, which as an example. She has a special hobby for a certain taste of black tea. If she does not drink this kind of black tea every day, she will feel that life is meaningless. One day, the origin of this kind of black tea suffered a disaster of extinction, and all the tea plants were destroyed. Ordinary people could only accept the unfortunate truth helplessly. However, the witch didn't give up. Saddened by the disappearance of the origin of this black tea, she practiced the taboo time retrospective magic over and over again, tracing back to the earliest time when the black tea tree took root and sprouted, and then observed the environmental variables in the time record while nurturing the seeds of the black tea tree. Countless failures, countless starts from scratch, and all the records she wrote could be piled up in several rooms. Even in this case, she still didn't give up. Finally, after hundreds of years, she successfully reproduced her favorite black tea and became one of the greatest witches in the witch god's domain. This story tells people not to provoke witches. Once they get serious about anything, they are impossible to do anything with. Black tea witch's persistence in the taste of black tea is the same as Little Witch Rose's passion for magic misles. Parfu. Parfu? Wrapped around Yunshi's wrist, the green slime made a curious sound and jumped up and down on Yunshi's wrist. Well, this is probably an unexpected pleasure. This green slime, who escaped from the water god's island, seems to have a little lower intelligence and will send out a lovely Parfu voice. In view of this, Yunshi simply named it Parfu. Anyway, this slime was easy to feed, it could survive even if only absorbing the free magic in the air. With such a tenacious vitality, no wonder that the slime race can survive in all corners of the endless god's domains. One day, I will defeat all slimes. Looking at this emerald slime, who made her suffer great humiliation, Rose gnashed her teeth. Never had she lost so badly since she learned magic missile storm. Parfu. Parfu, the slime was frightened and transformed back to the bracelet form, rolling into Yunshi's sleeve and hiding. Yunshi was slimed. The familiar touch returned. Sure enough, he seemed to be somewhat related to this type of slime. Well, the spare bandage is ready. It's not as good as the magic bandage, but it's okay to make use of it. Lancelot, the most ingenious of the three knights, came over with a brand new white bandage. Puff, it's so tight. Wrapping the white bandage around her big chest, Rose breathed a sigh of relief. Sure enough, this bandage could reassure her. Although Lancelot's bandage does not have the magic power to reduce the weight and size on her chest, just hiding the breasts that didn't fit her body shape could make Rose feel a sense of security. Oh, I really don't understand why my sisters like it so much and tell me that I can never let other witches know. It's clear that this thing has no other advantages besides storing great magic power. It can't be used as a magic missile. Very well, Rose. Are you satisfied? After binding Rose's beautiful breasts which Lancelot admired so much, Lancelot hugged Rose. Thank you, Lancelot. Rose felt a familiar sense of tightness and a less pleasant sense of heaviness, but she could only tolerate it until she obtained a new magic bandage. At least, she didn't like to walk around in broad daylight with such a pair of huge and shameful things. It wasn't just because of her sister's words, she didn't like it herself. Yes, she was one of the few poor breast minority among witches. She thought that poor breasts are beautiful. Unfortunately, her will was contrary to fact, but she often participated in the secret meetings of the poor breast minority and was one of the senior staffers. The value of witches is not determined by their breast. The little witch always thinks this way. I declare that your entrance test is over. Looking at the knights and magic team in front of him, Yunshi announced. Lancelot looked thoughtfully at the emerald slime bracelet on Yunshi's wrist and frowned. Parfu. Parfu. The slime recovered by Yunshi looked more lively and active than when it was the giant slime, and seemed to have no resistance to becoming a trophy. Well, this time, we were so unlucky to encounter such a rare mutant green hippo. Mordred was a little depressed. All of them were captured by the giant slime, and their armor, weapons, and even the broomstick Rose loved so much were eaten. That crystal on the broomstick was very expensive. Our preparedness was not enough. In fact, the slime still has weaknesses. Alexander carefully analyzed the situation. If they had been more alert, they would have been more cautious in trapping the green hippo. In this case, they could have escaped even if they couldn't win. The most terrible ability of the giant slime was to devour equipment, and it needed to launch it at close range. Even if Rose's magic missile storm couldn't break through the giant slime's defense, it was absolutely no problem to draw its attention at long distance. All three of them had committed the act of lowering their guard, although it was more or less because Mai was at their back, but after all, it was a mistake. I'll kill all slimes when I see them. Only dead slimes are good slimes. Rose gritted her teeth and swore to heaven as she watched the emerald slime on Yunshi's wrist. Even she had listed the goal of eliminating slimes as her daily lesson for the next 300 years. Anyway, slime is everywhere. Killing more is good for the world. Parfu. Parfu. The slime was frightened by Rose's expression. It escaped into Yunshi's clothes and became a heart-shaped necklace, pretending that it didn't know anything. The result of the entrance test is, Yunshi hesitated for a moment, but finally he couldn't go against his own heart. You have passed. Sure enough, Lancelot showed a clear smile. She knew Mai would give this answer. Well, we have passed the test. But we lost. Mordred hadn't figured it out yet. Is it because we knocked down the mutant green hippo? Alexander guessed. Yes, your test was just to knock down the mutant green hippo. Rose has done it. The mutant giant slime is not included in the test. Yunshi explained why they passed the test. He could deliberately embarrass them and prevent them from passing the test, but that was against his heart. Who are you? Must have known the result before sending me to see what kind of girls they are. Lancelot's perfect character. Mordred's concentration of power and her companion's character will never be abandoned in any adversity. Alexander's great vision. As well as Rose's witch talent. The members of the Knights and Magic team all have their own characteristics. With Rose as the core, this was a perfect team with extraordinary talent. Yunshi couldn't even find a reason to refuse them joining. Finally, let me ask you once again, do you really know the meaning of joining the Starwing Knights? There is no exaggeration in what you said. After joining the Starwing Knights, you can't quit. Yunshi didn't know what kind of mood he was in now. Is he happy? Of course, after personal contact with the Knights and Magic team, he was quickly attracted to them. They all had excellent talents, and none of them were pampered noble girls. They are veterans of hunting monsters, from preparing their own equipment to driving a carriage and laying out traps, everything they did was skillful. It would be a pity that such an excellent team would not be eligible to join the Starwing Knights. They are qualified to receive my blessings. I would like to join the Starwing Knights in order to be a better knight. Lancelot half knelt in front of Yunshi and kissed his finger. I would like to join the Starwing Knights in order to be the strongest shield and sword. Mordred also half knelt before Yunshi and kissed his finger. For the sake of world conquest, let me join the Starwing Knights. Alexander smiled and kissed Yunshi's finger. Mai's taste is very comfortable. Rose became even more annoying after close contact with Yunshi. Like is a lifetime. First love is the eternal love. Whether it is 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, the love of the witch will never change. Well, I am here to announce that you are officially part of the Starwing Knights. Yunshi pinched his black hair with complicated expressions. Although he still had long hair, will he become bald one day if the members of the Starwing Knights continue to increase like this? With such confusion, Yunshi pulled off 4 hairs and handed them to the 4 girls. The contract is established from this moment on. All the members of the Knights and Magic team finally got the blessing, which was also the certificate representing the qualification to join the Starwing Knights. Maybe it's also a curse. A curse named Becoming the Sword of Mai, which couldn't be dispersed and wouldn't dissipate. Chapter 636, The Witch's Blessing, Curse, That's the Blessing. Lancelot solemnly took Yunshi's black hair, which was as dark as night. This was the incredible miracle they were longing for. Beautiful hair. Mordred looked at her own hair with inferiority. Why is my hair so bad? She complained in her heart. Mai's legendary lucky charm. Alexander squinted her eyes, pinched the black hair, looked up and down, left and right, as if to see the mystery of the universe from the black hair. Mai, I like you the best. Rose cried out with joy filling her eyes. Everyone is an easy-to-understand girl. She quietly began to plant his seeds into the 4 girls' bodies. Soon he had a harvest. Like Hua you deduced, all the members of the Knights and Magic team had different extraordinary talents. Lancelot, weapon expert. Knights who possess this talent can use any weapon with ease. From daggers, sleeve swords to two-handed swords, they naturally understand how to use these weapons. Toughness, her will is as strong as steel. She will never give up hope and hold on till the very last moment. Mordred, Berserker's bloodline, the more she was wounded, the more powerful her attacks could be. Using this talent, you will inevitably pay the price of losing reason. Key patricide, like a cursed fate, there will inevitably be a war of life and death between her and her father, and no matter what happens, no one cannot prevent this fate. Alexander, King's cavalry, the king's wish is to conquer the world. Any force that prevents this wish will be crushed by the king's cavalry. With this talent, she can even ride god-ranked fantastic creatures. King's knights, the king can easily assemble loyal knights. They are the king's sword and shield, fighting for the king with no fear. Finally, it was the information of the little witch, Rose. Source of magic, you are naturally loved by the elements in the air. Elemental elves will come to you unconditionally and obey your orders. You can automatically master the skills of magic power reinforcement, magic compression, and magic capacity up. Witch's blessing, curse, only the biggest breasted witch can be the real great witch. Obtaining the contract from the mysterious great existence gives you a magic talent beyond everyone, and it also brings a terrible curse for you. The cursed witch can grow her chest only if she keeps growing stronger. She was shocked after reading the information of their talents from their seeds. Lancelot is a perfect incarnation of a paladin. The blood of Berserker and the talent patricide revealed Mordred's tragedy. Oh, did Alexander have the gift of being a king? Rose's genius is witch's blessing, curse. From this point of view, she can certainly become a great witch in the future. The 3 knights are all top-class geniuses. They can certainly break through the barrier of the hero rank with ease and will inevitably become heroes in tales and stories. The little witch's talent is even stronger. Even now, he could see a trace of the great witch from the size. Accepting Lancelot's talent from her seed, she instantly understood the method of use of dozens of weapons in his mind. Now even if he had only one branch in his hand, he could use master-level martial arts. After accepting Mordred's talent, she felt some kind of blood roaring deep in his body. Once he paid the price of reason, he would obtain the strength that could let him fight even if he was seriously injured. It was a blood of madness that could let him move beyond his own limits. After sharing Alexander's talent, Yunshi's sense of the girls of the Starwing Knights suddenly became much stronger. All girls in the Starwing Knights, from their chests to their favorite food, from their favorite clothes to their current appearance, Yunshi could clearly feel them. This was Mai's knights, the knights of the Star Child. The wings of the stars exist for him. Finally, it was the little witch's terrible talent. Source of magic, Yunshi never practiced magic before, but instinctively he mastered the method to absorb the free magic in the air, and he had a feeling that he could directly perform the magic Rose knew, ignoring the long casting time mortal magicians would spend. Witch's blessing, curse, Yunshi was freaked out. He clearly felt that his chest was growing along with the growing of the magic power he was obtaining. How can this be possible? This is not realistic. Who can tell me what happened? Yunshi looked at his chest with a frightened look. What kind of joke is this? Why is the witch's blessing, curse, also coming into effect as my seed drew her talents? Calm down, Yunshi. You are not a girl, you are not a girl, you still have a big D *****. There must be something wrong. Oh, what am I saying? I must be crazy. What a strange world. Fortunately, Yunshi stealthily used the breathing method he learned from Cassina the Sky Sword, and his chest quietly restored to its original state. Oh, fortunately, it's not a permanent curse. However, what happened had happened. Once it happened, something had been changed. Once it was recognized by the rules of the world, he would also be cursed, blessed, by the witch's curse, blessing. What's the matter with this curse? Yunshi quietly reached out his hand and pressed on his chest. Puff. Even if it was bound by the breathing method, the feel was still as perfect as if he was kneading the green slime bracelet. Clearly, there was nothing there, but he could still feel it with his hand. Parfu. Parfu. The lovely slime core was jumped directly onto Yunshi's chest, rolling around on the same kind as its own body. Yunshi stared at this lovely green slime and felt itchy in his chest. The bigger the breasts the witches had, the higher the magic power they could use, so all great witches had great breasts. From this point of view, Yunshi's disguise had the talent to become a witch. Parfu. Parfu. The green slime happily stuck on Yunshi's chest. No, Parfu. Yunshi flipped the disobedient little slime. The witch's curse was too terrible. It could create a magic organ that didn't exist. Is it possible that such a strange change would occur if the witch is a man? There should be no male in the witch race, because only women can awaken their witch bloodline. As the descendants of witches, only girls had the potential to be a new witch, and boys could only be a magician. Therefore, in the witch god's domain, the status of women is much higher than that of men. After all, it was a god's domain ruled by witches. In theory, there would never be a male witch. The will of the great stars, your strength is too strong. In the face of such a situation, Yunshi tried to weep but failed to shed a tear. Now, he was afraid he wouldn't reveal his true identity even if he took a bath with the girls of the Starwing Knights if he wrapped in towels. Is it an illusion, an illusion? It seems that this non-existent chest is still slowly absorbing mana from the air. If this goes on, it will develop again. Rose noticed the change. Although it was only for a moment, she did feel the aura of the witch from Yunshi's body. That was what only the witches could perceive, the blessings and curses of the witches. Mai's taste has become familiar. Rose rubbed her hand and smelled Yunshi like a pet puppy. Parfu. Parfu. The green slime jumped out of Yunshi's chest and flew to Rose with curiosity, but was hit by Rose's magic missile, and then rotated 720 degrees in the air and fell into Alexander's chest. Well, the slime's core. Alexander looked at the green slime on her chest and rubbed it with a strange look on her face. It feels good. Is this Mai's trophy? It's a rare slime core. Mordred also came up and pinched the green slime. Parfu. Parfu, the small and lovely green slime made a pleasant sound and seemed to enjoy the treatment. Humph, I'm going to kill slime for 300 years, the little witch was still holding a grudge. Mai is the only one who can touch my chest. It seemed that she just said something surprising. A big sweat bead fell from Yunshi's forehead. Mai's blessing is the best. Ignoring the three knights who were kneading and pinching the green slime, Rose stood on her toes and rubbed her face against the lower edge of Yunshi's chest. Obviously there seemed to be nothing there, but it brought the little witch unprecedented sense of security. In the past, her favorite pastime was to lie in the arms of her sisters and act like a spoiled child. Now, Mai gave her the same feeling. She felt that she had become more dependent on Mai and couldn't leave Mai. It must be because of the symptoms of my poisoning had deepened. The witch's curse is terrible. Yunshi pressed the little witch Rose's chest wrapped in bandages. The hand feel was incredibly good. Yes, it's inconvenient to have big chest. It's heavy and it affects balance. Every time I take a bath, I would feel my shoulders were overtired. Why do people think that this kind of thing is good? It's not necessary at all except for storing magic. Rose complained. If the civilian girls of the Starwing Knights had heard her words, they would be deathly jealous. Yunshi sighed. It's heavy. It's too heavy. This is the unbearable burden of life. Parfu. Parfu. The little green slime jumped up and down between the chest of the three knights, making a cheerful sound. Yunshi began to get used to the current situation. Fortunately, the organ that stored magic was still part of himself. Through the breathing method Cassina taught him, Yunshi gradually grasped its nature. It didn't really exist but was probably like a concretization of a certain concept, the witch's blessing, curse. As for Yunshi, he regarded it as a piece of equipment, a magic breastplate, which could store huge amounts of magic and protect his chest. Because it was actually the coagulate of mana, the defense of this breastplate was not superficial. It could probably block all hero-ranked magic attacks. In addition, there are other uses. Pafu. After fully enjoying the chest of the three girl knights, the green slime core jumped back to Yunshi's chest and swam in the fountain of magic. At the same time, as Yunshi shared the little witch's seed, all members of the Starwing Knights received different benefits. In the headquarters of the Starwing Knights, Hua Yu was dealing with documents. She suddenly frowned and looked at her chest. A source of magic appeared and rose directly to a very high level. As Ling Ling was secretly eating snacks. She suddenly found that her perception of the world became clearer. Her source of magic appeared and had the same quality as Hua Yu's. Similar changes had also occurred to other noble girls of the Starwing Knights family. They all found that middle-level or even top-level source of magic appeared in their bodies. By contrast, almost all the civilian girls of the Starwing Knights had only obtained low-level source of magic. None of them obtained the witch's blessing, curse. At least no one in the Starwing Knights was qualified to acquire this level of talent. Unlike the sword skill talent and the source of magic, the witch's blessing was clearly beyond the reach of the girls of the Starwing Knights. Similarly, the three girl knights' talents had also been disseminated. 7 girls awakened their weapons master talent, 2 obtained the berserker bloodline and 4 obtained the skills of the rider. Conversely, the 4 members of the Knights and Magic team also received feedback from the girls of the Starwing Knights. Well, is this the so-called blessing? Lancelot was the first to perceive her own changes. As a weapon master, she was sensitive to her changes in every muscle and nerve. 3 extraordinary gifts shared by all members of the Starwing Knights: sword skill talent, weakened; mentality talent, weakened; body talent, weakened. Although they were all weakened, they were all great talents with unlimited potential. Now, there was another talent that could be shared by the seeds, Rose's talent, the source of magic. All the girls had obtained the 4 kinds of supernatural talents. Although they were weakened compared to the original talents, it could drive countless ordinary people crazy if they knew about this. Moreover, these talents would continue to grow, and in this network of seeds, there were already more than one member of the Starwing Knights that had awakened their own unique talents, such as Hua Yu's White Golden Rose bloodline and Xiao Cao's Mortal Sword. Yunshi's seed had evoked their real potential, and their rebirth would further enhance Yunshi's talent. After all, the talents he obtained from the seeds were never weakened. However, Yunshi had always used Hua as a reference, so he had no pride at all, rather a sense of inferiority. Hua didn't choose to enter the hero rank, and he made the same choice. He wanted to wait until he became stronger before stepping into that realm. As for how strong he was now, Yunshi himself didn't clearly know, because his strength was still increasing, and was far from his limit. When normal human beings reach the limit of flesh and blood, they have to try to enter the hero rank. Otherwise, once their potential of flesh and blood was exhausted, they would never be able to enter the hero rank. Yunshi's situation was quite different from that. He was more like an archaic dragon or an elf. These inherently extraordinary races were far superior to human beings. In the eyes of these strong races, reaching the hero rank was as easy as breathing. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.